Okay.
Attention, please.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Hey, what is going on, everyone? It is David Palmer, Leo King, and welcome to Deep Astrology, your weekly astrology forecast for this week of January the 16th through the 22nd, 2024. Super happy to have you all here. Of course, this is the weekly astrology show that I'm going to channel the astrology and go deep into the charts for this week. But this is not any week. This is the most important deep astrology I've ever done. And the last time I said that was all the way back 4 years ago, about this same week. So this is not a traditional deep astrology. This one is going to have, of course, the transits and what's to come this week. But we're at one of the rarest transits that we will ever see. And I can prove that in this deep astrology. And that's why you all are members to High Vibe. So you can get astrology that you're not going to get anywhere else. By the way, I am very sick. So I might not look super sick because I just did everything I could to clean myself up here and present you all with what I'm going to be doing. The show with Rich Lopp is going to be postponed. Tomorrow I will do sun signs. I only have enough energy to do one show a day at the moment. So I'm going to just have people take a second to look at that image again. Now, why on this week of all weeks would I have it be this image? You can see that's 2024 at the top. It's a time machine. It's everything from the American Revolutionary War, the Knights Templar, and King Henry VIII. And what do they all have in common in those time periods? What they have in common is what we're going to go through this week. What they all don't have in common is that within a matter of not just a day, but less than a day, we are going to see this week the Sun conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and then both ingress into Aquarius together. Now, of course, that's the big transit of the week. The Sun also does ingress into Aquarius. We are seeing at the same time the Moon in Aries here to start this week make a big square to the Sun in Capricorn. Of course, we have Mercury and Mars that are getting closer to their conjunction again, but this time to happen in Capricorn. But I could talk about all those things. Venus is going to be squaring Neptune during this Sun-Pluto. And to me, this is, if we take Pluto, which is conspiracy, you're looking deeper, or repression, and Neptune, which can be the fog, especially in a hard aspect like a square. With Venus and Sag here, it can be deception. But it also, in many ways, is opening up many weird interdimensional timelines here. You know, if we remember back 4 years ago when Saturn and Pluto met in Capricorn, it was with the Sun conjuncting it at the same day. Now, to have that rarity, that's never going to happen again in our lives, and it never did happen in thousands of years. I went back. There was no Sun conjunct Saturn and Pluto when they met on the same day. Plus, there was Mercury back then, if you don't remember, a year ago. 4 years ago. But now, looking at all the history and looking at all the data, there has never been in the same day the Sun and Pluto both being Capricorn and conjunct at the last second, literally, geometry-wise, then both ingress into Aquarius and be conjunct. It's never happened. Never happened. So the reason why I use that as the deep astrology imagery is because we have to realize that there's an anomaly here, and we already saw what the anomaly of 2020 was. this is the big icing on the cake of what is to come. Now, that's, like I said, this is going to be a little different deep astrology, but these were the other images that I had come up with that I was going to use. Is a time machine, and it's Henry VIII. And now, why would I put Henry VIII there? Well, in 1532, when we had the Sun and Pluto conjunct at 29 Capricorn, and especially, if you remember, he was around during the time of the Saturn and Pluto conjunction of 1517 into 1518. And so just a little over a decade after that, right, 15 years after that, then he went through a Sun Pluto, and that's when he seceded from the Catholic Church. At the same time, he had it to where it was in Capricorn, but the Sun went into Aquarius the next day, and then Pluto stayed in Capricorn only for a matter of weeks and then ingressed. But it was a matter of weeks. This was another one. And the reason why I'm putting him there is because he's the closest that we can get to the same time period of seeing all the same transits. But I also put going all the way back to the 1284 times. If you actually go to 1287, it was the Sun and Pluto that conjuncted at 0 Aquarius, which we will see this week. And that deals with the Knights Templar, and that deals with also the Holy War coming to its complete end. Or has it just been redone? You know, Pluto deals with resurgence. It deals with bringing things up. The dead also can bring the dead back, or things that we thought were squashed. I like this one because it's a little bit like a roulette wheel. And then this one was interesting too, because then in 1778, very similar to us, the Sun and Pluto will conjunct in Capricorn, but we will not see Pluto move with the Sun into Aquarius, or they didn't see that. And actually, going back to 1078, there was another Sun Pluto, didn't do that either. Going back to the 500s, going back to as far as I could go, there was nothing that could get me to this. But if we also think about, this is a 1,000-year plus bunch of cycles that we've had just in the last 4 years, and this is the Big Bang. This is the one that changes the world and the landscape of the world forever. And I felt like people could visualize for just 1 minute with me, or maybe it's a couple more, but just visualize with me what's happening, what's coming all together at the same time. And this really is a timeline switch. I am going to switch it up on you for a sec here before we go into this astrology, because this is going to blow your mind. This just came out. So just 4 days ago, we had the UAP meeting back in Congress, and a lot of the congressmen and women were unhappy that they didn't get the info that they want, that there's something being hidden. But one of them just came out, and it's the rep from Florida, Anna Polina, and she says it's incredibly important to listen to the specific words that the UFO whistleblower that Congress is investigating. She specified that he has been stressing that we are dealing with interdimensional entities, not aliens. She says this. Now, I'm at home, so I don't have the best of all my shit to be able to have you hear this. But I've retweeted it on my Twitter. And this was during the recent closed door congressional hearings. And she goes way deeper into this. And this is the new accepted understanding of what we could be dealing with and becoming soon. But she goes way deeper into this. And when I thought about this popped up after I did all this work today. So if you're somebody who really doesn't believe in timeline shifts or interdimensional energy, are you sure with this transits that we're going to be talking about today and this week and the world changing forever? And that's what I put it off as, is the world changing forever. I'll show you the last one that I didn't use, but I thought it was pretty cool. Except that it was weird because it was like 2020. I don't know what that is. But that kind of feels actually kind of real to me. Now, I'm going to come back to camera and talk to you about this. So, I know that we've seen a lot of major transits, Saturn and Pluto. That was heavy. And like I had told you all for a long time and for years prior, that was going to be a major landmark moment and it would change our lives forever. Well, it happened in Capricorn and Pluto was there. That got its big conjunction with Saturn. And then, of course, Pluto also made conjunctions. It was really Jupiter. Jupiter made conjunctions with Pluto. And then Jupiter and Saturn made their conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius, all in 2020. Then you go into 2021, it's Saturn and Uranus in square. It's Jupiter square Uranus. And really, it's about the Saturn-Uranus square in 2021. 2022 is about Jupiter and Neptune making their big conjunction. 2023 has been about the Mars retrograde, the Venus retrograde that came out of nowhere that we hadn't seen since the revolutionary times, right? Especially in the Revolutionary War. It actually had happened prior to that. And you can also say that 2023 also had, you know, its uniqueness in as far as all the retrogrades and the weirdness of Jupiter and Venus making their direct motions and retrogrades all within 12-hour period and almost making it to where we had every planet retrograde except one planet. But, you know, it's 2024 here that is the uniqueness, not so much about Pluto and Aquarius. Remember, 2023 had Pluto ingress into Aquarius, and that's what made it special. But it retrograded back. And we're going to see that again this year. But what makes this different is the sun's going to conjunct Pluto this week in Aquarius. Now, it actually technically will not be the exact conjunction, which makes it weirder. It's going to actually conjunct technically in Capricorn. And that makes it to where at least we're going to really start to feel Pluto in Aquarius because the sun will still be there highlighting it. And at the last second of the last minute, I don't think it's a coincidence, and I'm not here on this show about being political, but I like to look at the landscape. Don't forget that the night that Trump won in 2016, it was Mars at 29:59, exactly where Sun and Pluto are going to conjunct, exactly where the Sun and Saturn, or Jupiter and Saturn were in 2020, and then they both moved into Aquarius. But in 2016, Mars crossed over that, and where's Mars? Oh, Mars is in Capricorn. With all these aspects that are hitting the same spot. And we've never seen so many aspects hit this spot, and this also changes the world. It changes the way that we're ever going to feel the world. It's not ever going to be the same after this. Every event that we've been waiting to happen, it's going to start revealing itself. And I think one of the deeper parts of what you should take stock with as a conscious being this week is like, what has Pluto been teaching us? It's been teaching us that the more that you think that you have something under control, you don't. The repression is the pushing the feelings away of learning how to accept what fate is. That's what Pluto is. It's fate. And when it's in Capricorn, it's extremely fated. And so there's events that are going to happen in life that we feel like are all sunk in and determined from our perspective. But with Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, and with Pluto going to ingress this week into Aquarius with the sun at the same time, we are moving from Saturn world to Uranus world, which is going to bring it into the wildest place ever. And it's going to activate the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which happened in 2020. It's going to activate the Saturn-Pluto conjunction because now we're going to be looking at Saturn. Remember that last year Saturn ingressed into Pisces, yet that was when the sun was ahead. Remember that there was an extra long period of having the sun and Saturn in the same place? Sun and Saturn met in Aquarius. Then the sun went forward into Pisces with no Saturn. And then Saturn went into Pisces when the sun was in Pisces. So we had two Sun-Saturn energies. And so it was a longer than normal Sun-Saturn. Well, the same thing goes with if it's the longest outer planet. You'll never. I did the math. I literally went on every electional chart search I could do. That's what I did today. I spent 5-6 hours today for this. Just to let you know, it's never happened before. And when it hasn't happened before, everything that you've ever dreamed couldn't happen, will. Everything that you dream that won't happen, will. Everything that you dream that will happen, won't. Everything that you think is solid and secure. And that's the weird part about Pluto and Capricorn. The laugh that Pluto has is whatever you think is so in the bucket right now, and everything that is so structured and that you know exactly what the path is not. We've learned this lesson already with Jupiter, Saturn at 0 Aquarius. We've learned this lesson over the last 4 years. We thought this was going this way. No, it's going that way. We thought everything, and that's why I call it a shattered reality. Well, the reality itself is completely shattered at this point. Now it's inverting into the weirdest reality we will ever experience. But I think that's part of evolution. And that's really what Uranus is about. And with Pluto ingressing into Aquarius with the sun, and that we're going to see Pluto in Aquarius for most of this year. And we only now have just September, October, and most of November. So less than 3 months left of our lives of Pluto Capricorn. And we get a big break from it. It's the understanding, though, that we are going into all these time periods because Capricorn is the ruler of where we're seeing the sun Pluto, and that's ruled by Saturn, and that rules time. And so whether it was the Saturn Pluto, whether it was the Jupiter Pluto, or whether it even was the Jupiter Saturn that was at the end of Capricorn and then both went into Aquarius conjunct, this is the end of time as we knew it. And that might scare people, but it's more about the evolution of understanding what time is, that we're moving to that higher level. You know, it's not so linear anymore. It's not so, okay, at 2 p.m. and da-da-da-da. You know, I've said this before, but most humans have never lived in the way that we've lived, right? The idea of going to bed at 10 p.m., waking up at 6 a.m., that's not natural. That's not fated. That's not who we are as a species. That's not, it was a good experiment, but watching humans have to come back to the weird parts of who they actually are. And actually, that's the oddest part to me, I think. And I think the part that Pluto's going to laugh at the most this week and for the rest of our lives is, I can't believe these humans forgot what humans are. The idea that humans just get up in the morning and they go to bed at night and they just do that. And that's not how the history has ever had it, ever. Just only the last 150 years of an industrial revolution and the idea of having a job and going to work at a factory. So if you really think about it, this is not just your traditional, typical astrological week when we are having an anomaly that is the highest probability of, as Terence McKenna would have said back in the day, this is time wave zero. This is the compression of all compressions. I mean, he already predicted that with 2012. It's interesting for me to see, and when I show you these charts, I've always said that he died before 2012, so we didn't have him or anybody to have a voice about time wave zero or anything that deals with the understandings of compression of time since his death. And I've tried to carry that message through astrological means. He used the I Ching. But I'm here to tell you that this is us reaching a 0 point that's beyond what we would conceive as a 0 point. If you think about quantum computing now, there is no just 1 and 0 anymore. It's not so simple. And I think that people are gripping with the end of this Capricorn transit, and especially with Pluto, because remember, the sun will never be with Pluto ever again in our lives in Capricorn. And so this is your big goodbye. So even though it's not the goodbye of Pluto in Capricorn, it's actually the goodbye in every way. The only last thing is Pluto to ingress back, and I think that's going to be based off all the changes that are going to come over this next 7 months and to 8 months, and what people are going to try and hold back onto during that time period of September, October, and especially into November. It's like a final test of trying to, jump back to some sort of old time period, or, get back to some place that makes you feel more comfortable. That makes you feel like you have some sort of trap, jail, or frame in the programming of your mind that's been repressed, or even the concept of that time. A lot of people are more comfortable having some sort of structure in their lives. Yet that's the epitome of what being free is. So many people talk about free will, and the people who talk about it the most are the people who love their structure of what time they go to sleep. That's the irony. Because really, it's not based off a clock time, right? As humans, I mean, the more that we become systematic with what time we eat, and what time we should sleep. Or, one thing Sophia and I have learned a lot about having a child is, sleep training is not positive for a baby. And all the data says it now. And most of us were sleep trained. And, it's taught us a lot of lessons about how psychological issues that happen to humans. It's scary when you look at the last 30 years of data, which is ironic since that goes back to the last Saturn Pluto that was in Libra. And it's really weird when you see all the data now that's out of why the mental health crisis is. I mean, you can blame it on chemicals in food. You can blame it on genes. But the irony of it all is it's connected to how we were all raised to sleep, how we were all raised to have comfort and love and attention, and especially by the mother. Doesn't matter if you're a male or a female. The mother's role of the first 3 years, especially the first year, is everything. And when you're forced to try and be something that you have no way to even be, right? You're forced to try and be a human that has to go to bed at this time and has to wake up at this time, and is kind of forced into that. We've all having to realize that that's the deepest part of Pluto. The fate of unlocking a part that we're the most scared to realize. And this is definitely a week to where every event that's going to take place for the rest of your life is going to be the reminder that what we've seen and what we've seen as a buildup, and you can already see it across the world, across your own life, there's a big unknown. And instead of trying to say, no, everything's known, I get where I'm going, no matter how much you want to look at something, I'll use an example. I mean, at the end of this year, the High Vibe TV studio lease is up. I've had it, this will be the 7th year. And of course, 90 days prior, they're going to try and force me to stay and give me a 3-year option. And they're going to raise the rates. And it's already stupid high. So of course, Sophia and I are like, let's just go get land. The amount of money I spend there a month, right? And the amount of money I've spent there over the last 7 years, over $1 million, that if I were to put that into a property for us and to build a High Vibe TV studio on our own property and go to a place, but my whole point is that even with that, as for sure in my feeling, in my gut, I don't know if that's going to be the way it goes. And I'm willing to be okay with that. Because I look at it and go, well, I need to clean up some of my credit. The only way I was able to get to this point is I had to use credit cards, right? Next week is my last payment on my biggest loan that I've had to fucking carry for 6 years. Business debt. So I gotta think about a lot of things. And I'm also at the same time like, we'll see how the world is. Maybe the world still needs me to be there. Or maybe a different option pops up, or you never know. The whole point of this is to really realize with Pluto that it's the death that we all have to face. The death of the understanding of control in yourself. And the release is fate. To let things go down to fate. But the darker Pluto gets in life, and the more that the sun conjuncts it, the more people become afraid. I mean, you already see the fear of war. You already see the fear of some people about, if Trump's, and to me, I look at the Trump thing like, well, this is happening at the end of Capricorn. I mean, that's kind of his thing in the Aquarius, but does that mean it's actually going to be him? There's too many unknowns around this corner. And the more that I think that you can hurt yourself in your evolution is to already think that you have it for sure figured out. Pluto is not a long lesson about what you know, like Jupiter or even Uranus with some sort of insight that breaks the mold. Neither with Neptune that gives you some sort of spiritual significance and some higher frequency vibrational understanding or even intuitive. No, Pluto is actually very simple. Pluto is whether or not you are going to surrender to the parts of yourself that have been taken over. Pluto rules the understanding of whether it's something taking us over, whether it's the idea also at the same time of a parasite. It's whether we're going to let go. And so when it's in Capricorn, it's the idea of our business, our way we structure our lives, the way that we have seen our governments act. And this isn't just since 2020. They were acting crazy going all the way back into 2008 and prior. the way many people around this world think that they're in a free place when they're not, including Americans. I'm not here to just rat on everybody on the planet right now. It doesn't matter what Pluto's corrupt side likes to show, right? Pluto likes to show where the corruption is. We live on a planet right now where it's gone corrupt everywhere. And the number one place it's gone corrupt is in our own selves. You know, especially those that are afraid to break out of a system that's more like a jail than it is being human. The good news in all this is every opportunity of your life really comes down to whether or not you're willing to be open to that door being opened by Uranus. It's Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius. And a lot of it is the most unpredictable aspect, but it's like being in a jail and having the door open. Are you going to sit there and watch it? Or are you going to open the door and see what's on the other side of it? And that can feel very Jupiterian. But, you know, a lot of this really is with Jupiter and Uranus that are getting ready for their conjunction, as Uranus, of course, is retrograde during this conjunction this week on Saturday, and this ingress into Aquarius. But it's going to come direct on January 27th, and then it will be all planets direct, and we will be in quite a extreme moment that it's already lined itself up. I mean, I wish I could say a better way to put it, but another way to put it would be the dominoes and Vias for Vendetta. You know, like everything from the divine has been set up for whether some things collapse, some things stay afloat. It's not all or nothing. Although Pluto can be that way. Pluto can be that way, though, about certain systems, but then keep certain systems all the way on still. Doesn't mean the whole system. And there will always be jobs. There will always be time. There will always be Capricorn. Pluto doesn't come through and kill a sign. It goes through and exposes the parts within our consciousness, our psyche, especially because Pluto is the deepest of our repression, the deepest of our psyche collectively, individually. But the irony of it is no matter, you know, it's not like, although you could use a good example of Pluto and Sag. I mean, let's be honest, after Pluto and Sag, how's the school systems doing today? How's the academia going today? How is travel going today? How is, you know, you can start to see that Pluto, the more that you keep, even if it leaves, trying to attach to the old way it was, it'll burn you, right? It's like going back to a grave and expecting the person to be alive again. It's not going to happen. And so, you know, the government will never be the same. And that might be a hard one for everybody around the world. The other thing is in yourself, your ability to how well that you follow fate. I used to call it the fate train. Beep, beep, if you remember. I don't know why I lost steam with that, but I think because I've seen how many people, which has been, I think, the hardest thing for me to be, and to be honest and to be transparent with you all, the hardest thing I've ever seen in my life is doing this work as long as I have, and to see how many people in 2021 stopped believing in fate and started believing more into their own control, started to want to actually let control persuade them to be controlled. And that's what's ironic is I'm probably the most least free will person. Yet at the same time, I live my life to be more actually in the way of free will and practice that as far as what I preach. And give you what the fate is, because the planets are the only thing that are reliable. Like this Sun Pluto is guaranteed to happen this week, and it's going to guaranteed to happen in Capricorn and Aquarius, and it's never happened before in eternity. For at least as long as the math that you and I know and that computers know today could even trace back. Okay? That none of the programs go farther back. Right? After 6,000 years BC, they don't like to look farther back. So, you know, it's one of those things to where this is an anomaly now that is stamping all the anomalies we've been seeing for 4 years. And I think that's what scares people. I've been thinking about this disease X. And of course, that doesn't surprise me because I've been warning you all. I mean, last year, why do you think I did for my 5-year prediction? I did the Eye of the Vulgar. And why I've been channeling and doing Hypergate for all these years? To help people see about the X. And it, I mean, whether it's X now or SpaceX or now it's disease X, I've been trying to warn you all. I've been trying to give you that. And that comes from astrology. That comes from understanding and going deep into it. You know, Capricorn's about the timing element of astrology. And it just blows my mind that a lot of people don't really like the timing of astrology because it's scary. It's scary that we have to face things. You know, we wish we could always in life, you know, push it off, just like a job or an appointment for the dentist, like I do. Or, you know, we can call back and try and reschedule for tomorrow. Pluto doesn't do that. And so in all of our lives, we have to remember that, you know, whatever's going to show up here is that's what Pluto is. It's the shadowy figure that comes out of nowhere. And especially in Aquarius, it's the really shadowy figure that we really don't know and what it's going to look like. When it shows up, we have to learn to accept it and listen to it, or the more that we push it away, the more he's going to continue to dig in deeper and find a way. Reminds me of a horror movie. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be one. But I ask for you on this rarest occasion that any human being could be alive. You've already been through enough of those in the last 4 years. But this is the one that truly, because it is the farthest planet out with Pluto, is the most rarest event that you will ever see. I mean, in Hypergate last week, we try to help people with understanding prophecy and predict things for the future. And not only in Hypergate 3, we're teaching people to actually, how do you write a prophecy for somebody 1,000 years from now? What are the anomalies that you would do? That's how Nostradamus did it. He used anomalies in astrology. Well, you're at one. You're at one that we can foretell and tell people for what the actions are going to come out this week and for this year. That we can at least warn people 1,000 years from now, when this event happens, these are the kind of things that are going to be going down. And these are the kind of feelings, and this is where society is going to be. And, you know, to say things are going to be shaky is an understatement. And I think that we have to remind ourselves that there could be a positive in this Uranian vibe of going into Aquarius about learning how to ride or surf frequencies better. But if you're somebody who likes to stay in the same place in the same way, this is not going to be fun. And that's what's the irony of Aquarius being a fixed sign. It's a sign that deals with wanting to stay fixated. You know, it's fixated on trying to always find a solution or change when it needs to change. It's about trying to always find a solution. Yet the solutions with Pluto become so extreme that it almost becomes drastic. And we already saw that with Jupiter, Saturn, and the rollout of the vaccine. Literally, the rollout of the vaccine was Jupiter, Saturn. Or the same thing, the Y2K crisis, right? That was the Jupiter, Saturn of Taurus in 2000. And even more than that, the dot-com burst. You know, these are the things that are going to now all come into an extreme. You know, it reminds me of how a black hole would happen, right? The idea of so much pressure falling in on itself. And the idea of the solutions, we don't want to go crazy and lose our minds trying to find a solution for everything. Especially that are piggybacked off Capricorn things, like maintaining the structure. Maintaining where it really is more of a jail than it is freedom. And I feel confident that humanity is ready for this, but with Venus that is in Sag this whole week, you know, it was one of those things where I'm like, well, if Venus can come into Capricorn being the South Node dispositor, nope. This whole week, Venus is in Sag squaring Neptune. And the South Node being in Libra and this North Node being in Aries. And now that North Node in Aries is getting closer to Chiron. You know, talk about the world feeling crippled. I mean, I think I said it on a video recently, but it was like from the Stephen Hawking weird shit to Dave Chappelle's new thing. Instead of making fun of trans, he's making fun of handicapped people, to I said it the other night, but yeah, I forgot the name of that woman, but that she just got out of jail and her mom forced her to be in a fucking wheelchair. I mean, whenever you start seeing North Node Chiron shit, it deals with us feeling handicapped. Believe it or not, I was born with that transit, and I've always felt handy, and mine's in Gemini. So I've always felt handicapped because whether I speak truth or not, people don't understand me, or, one minute people love me, and the other minute it's like, no, they hate me because I'm speaking truth. It's like, what the fuck? Or I was shy forever. Chiron, you have to learn to accept who you are. And you have to also learn to accept that, the identification of things are warped, weird, different, not normal at all. And they're here to guide us. So if you keep looking for normal, you're going to get more of the unnormal, even more. And that opens up these weird doors that, whether it's interdimensional, whether it's the roots of our human origins, NASA went out and took space dust off an asteroid a couple years back, more than a couple years back, but during the same time of Oumuamua. Ironically, I think that's what they took it from instead of the asteroid they said they did. But they finally opened it just in the last 4 days, too. They had it in October, and they needed to come up with a quote unquote tool to open this thing up. And while they opened it, they showed everybody what it was, this black, weird dust. Every moment from here feels like, whether it's the secession from religion, which happens to be the one cornerstone of all Sun, Pluto, Capricorns into Aquarius. And that's a hard one, especially with all this energy that's happening right now with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, which that, of course, is 2026. And that conjunction at 0 degrees, that's something that hasn't happened going all the way back into the times of Mesopotamia. And if you don't know what that means, 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, before any of the religions you know today. But the main thing is like 1287, that's the end of the Christians in Jerusalem. In 1532, that's the end of the Catholic Church having supreme reign over kings, where the first king says no, King Henry VIII, and starts the Church of England. And that's the same time Martin Luther as well says no to the Pope and starts a revolution of Reformation. And then in 1778, it's also the end of the Church of England for a place called the 13 Colonies. And it's the beginning of the idea of freedom of religion and not having a centralized church. So if you look at it now, I would say that the one repeating aspect of Pluto and Capricorn is when people can't let go and they hold on to the structure. The irony of the whole thing is the structure of their religion. And that's what's really interesting. And the more that you see that, that's the weirder things like you see, like Stephen Hawking and midgets, to how many times has the Pope had to apologize, to how many sexual abuses have happened to children across this planet, or the Dalai Lama that we saw this year. Now, of course, that's the name the same way that a Pope is named. Or seeing people, believing that, this is the return of Christ again, or the return of Muhammad. It's the same thing happening that you're seeing in the Middle East as that you're seeing in the Western countries. Which one is it? Are we just going to sit there and watch people kill themselves over it? Because that's what it looks like. Finding unity with Pluto and Aquarius could be difficult. Technology and the exposing of what it is. I mean, I always have said the irony of like Pluto at the beginning of Capricorn in 2008 was the launch of the iPhone. Now, you'd think Pluto and Capricorn wouldn't be so much about technology, but it was the technology that controls you, and they know everything about you now, right? It was the government understanding the metadata and understand your conversations and so forth. And so, you know, the real stuff that's about to come out here is to show us that it's not that we're innovating with technology, but we're going into a space of what's actually being revealed that's already been so far technologically advanced. It also deals with the weather. One of the repeating patterns that I saw through all these years was droughts, floods, or even weather stopping certain people in the middle of war and being a deadly cost. So with that, let's go into the astrology because I have a lot to show you, and it's going to be quite interesting to say the least. So I hope that you all enjoy your time with me on this deep astrology. So, of course, here we are in this sun that's approaching Pluto, and to see this is kind of traditional. But when we actually get to it, it's the most anomaly, astrological aspect and the hardest to do ever. And it's never happened before. Now, if it did happen, it would be in a time and a space that we couldn't even understand. And that nobody on this earth or who has lived in what we know as history has ever known it. So we're on that approach. And I've been thinking about this a lot, being sick at home. It's like, wow, look at this world right now. We're literally at the end of the trail, at the end of the end, the last plank of the ship, the last plank of destiny, per se. We got Mars, of course, here at 9 degrees and 55 minutes. Mercury on its way towards that conjunction with Mars. And on this Wednesday, Mercury starting to make a nice trine to Jupiter over these as the approach. So it's like having a wider understanding of like, what's the big deal about this Sun Pluto? Well, what's it here to create? You know, we have to remember that Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, where everything's going to be coming into, and it's still retrograde, but Jupiter's with Uranus. We're going to see that conjunction in April. And we haven't seen that conjunction happen since, of course, back in 2010, when it happened in Pisces and in Aries, and then back in 2011, when they got back in the same signs, we saw Fukushima. So, you know, we have that on top of everything as anomaly-wise, but Mercury is getting a big insight. Now, remember, Mercury already was in trine to Jupiter when it stationed retrograde, right? So that's the interesting part here, is that we're going to see this Mercury trine, the third Mercury trine to Jupiter. So there's a big picture, and there's a big picture about what does it mean in your self-worth? What does it mean in the quality of life to actually allow fate to happen and to let go of structures and to let the universe be your guide, literally? Let your true conscious be your guide, not the prison one. The moon is going to be in Aries here on Wednesday, and it's going to be making its squares over to the sun and Pluto, but it's going to trine Venus for a moment before those squares. And the more I keep thinking about this Pluto energy, you know, Venus and Pluto, they don't get along. Let's not forget. When Venus is in Scorpio, it's very unhappy, right? Becomes too obsessive. And because the South Node is having massive, horrible aspects to it, if you just see this at 19 degrees of Libra, we still have Saturn making a very difficult exact quadrant. We still have Uranus making an exact quincunx, which is very difficult. And then here we see the moon opposing it. Here we see at the same time Chiron getting, you know, ready for its conjunction. So we're seeing Chiron starting to oppose it. We're already seeing the North Node opposing it. So we're seeing a massive shit ton of energy on that South Node, which again is dealing with the idea of you're trying to maybe gain the past again by finding happiness or some sort of, you know, that could be all the way to find peace, or worse is trying to find some old relationship to bring you find peace again or something. And so this is not a time for us to focus on Venus as being the one that's going to be offering us anything good. And that's unfortunate. You know, like I said in yesterday's daily, with this big Sun Pluto, the universe is saying, don't focus on Venus. Why? Well, the South Node's in Libra. Venus is the ruler of Libra. Venus is only getting a trine to the moon. Venus is already with trines. The North Node is already done. It's going to be facing Neptune through this whole week. And it's the deception of, oh, I'll buy this and I'll feel better. Or I'll leave this, or I'll change this in a relationship and I'll feel better. You won't. It has nothing to do with that. So this deals with massive, not just repressed energy we're facing with the Sun and Pluto, but also our value systems and the psychological insanity it is that you feel better because you bought something, or you feel better because you want to change your relationship because you think it'll be better or whatever. You know, like if anything, if you think about the fact that this Mercury is going to be trining Jupiter with Uranus here, it's about maintenance. That's pretty different, but also the doors that are opening about things that you hold on to, the things that you understand that are valuable. And when I say hold on to, those are values. Those are things that you know are your talents and your skills. Capricorn is about the system in which you do these things. And what's ending is the system and how you do certain things, especially when it comes to how you use your values, how you use your skills. And we need to start actually realizing that there's a whole nother world in front of us that's going to be different on how work is done, different on how money is acquired, different on how your value is going to be of something. You need to start believing in yourself. If you think, you know, your little idea of what you think is great for yourself is never going to happen, well, that's going to be your biggest problem, is that it definitely could happen. It's just you're choosing to not believe in it. And I think that's the interesting part, because we always put the system as the idea of, oh, this system will keep me from it. But yet I like the system, when really a lot of it is, you know, here to serve some other agenda with Pluto. And it's really to serve, you know, whether you want to call that a caste system or you want to call that some sort of, you know, system about work, that this is coming to an end. And I know that's going to look scary, but whether it's shipping routes being attacked right now around the world, whether it's all these things, you know, just even go to Amazon. You don't buy your lotion anymore there. They're trying to save all these other businesses like Rite Aid and shit. Like, oh, we'll deliver the Rite Aid version of it to you in like a week. And I'm like, didn't Rite Aid just file bankruptcy? Or I just went into Walgreens, you know, right before I got sick, and it was like the whole aisle of shampoo and everything was gone. And I asked the lady, where's it all at? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, what? Yeah, we didn't get any of it. So you have to realize, like, you know, the systems in which that you become addicted to, this is you learning to be okay with a different direction. And it's hard because Mars is at its exaltation here in Capricorn, and it's sitting pretty here. And Mercury's trining Jupiter this week and going to conjunct that Mars soon. But, you know, again, this is going to be a Mercury-Mars that's going to be when they're both in Aquarius, which is kind of crazy. I wanted to throw this transit for that Wednesday night. The moon exactly in Aries at 27 degrees, going to square the sun. So we already come into this right before with the moon squaring Pluto, the moon and the sun in their first quarter square. Remember, we had that new moon in Capricorn that was close to Pluto. Let's not forget that when we start the Chinese New Year, now in 3 weeks, Pluto will be in Aquarius. So we're going to have that's another anomaly. But that's actually something that we have seen in the past. But it definitely changes the whole picture extremely to have new moons with Pluto twice. Not just in the same sign, but in different signs. It's not normal. That's already a very high up rarity. And so, you know, this also means that people that are born this week are very rare, or even born over the last 3 weeks, or even born over the last, you know, month, or born a month from now, but mainly the ones prior to it, because they will progress into this weird progression. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans itself out. And I've been having these weird issues with this. Usually never fails me, and it's been, this computer's done. I've had now every computer that's not working for me go out. So, you know, that's the thing about being in too much trying to have control of things is hoping that, oh yeah, no, it'll always work. No, things don't always work. And things run out of time on their own. It'll come back here in a second. It was funny because I was live, but I wasn't live. It was to the wrong RTMP when it did the program. It kept one from the daily yesterday. What I was saying, though, is even me, I get really upset when something like that happens. Really upset. I've called shows off before and started over. But, you know, we have to let go of how we can be too harsh on ourselves and so forth. let's get back to where we were at because we have a lot to cover here. So we come into this not looking, not positive for going into the past or trying to just find peace. Believe it or not, peace in jail is the worst thing that you could ever find. You need to start thinking about that. You know, the weirdness it feels to leave the control systems in yourself, in your life, the better. And a lot of that's going to look weird with that North Node Chiron. And so this moon in Aries is almost too sure with the square to Pluto and the sun in Capricorn, because we've been so used to this square for so long. This is a square you will not see ever again with the sun. Never again. You'll never see Pluto. You'll never see a first or three-quarter square or anything with the sun in Capricorn, with Pluto in Capricorn, right? And Aries moon. You'll never see that again. So it's almost too confident going into this because that moon is looking at Jupiter and Uranus like, okay, everything's going to go into this awesome space. So this isn't about confidence. Because on the other side of Pluto, the sun's going to be looking at Saturn, that it still has not made its conjunction with in Pisces. So if you think about just the fact that we're going to go into the rarest events of our life here and look ahead at all this, you know, there's an understanding that, you know, there's a lot of bumpy territory ahead. All right, Thursday here, that sun and Pluto are going to get extremely close. And it's definitely going to be an interesting moment because we are going to see within a degree and a half, almost 2 degrees. Mars will reach 10 degrees. Mercury not in trine to Jupiter just yet, but Mercury is flying really fast. Look at Mercury's picking up speed throughout this. It's doing 114. It's going to be faster than Venus, so back to its fastest position. The sun is extremely fast, doing over a degree a day. The moon's traveling fast too. But that Mercury and Jupiter, they will make their trine on the 18th, West Coast time. And all with the sun still in Capricorn at 28 degrees and the moon in Taurus conjunct Jupiter. So there's definitely a big message before the biggest event of our lives happens. And it's not so much a channeled message. It's much more of a foresight and understanding. It's not about confidence as much as it is about understanding, like, what have you learned about the system? What have you learned about your control? What have you learned about fate? And how can you do something with it? Like, what do you know how to do with it? Do you know how to create with it? Taurus is all about creation. And what are the beautiful things that the universe showed you since the Mercury retrograde a month and a half ago? That we've seen 3 trines to Mercury, to Jupiter, and the moon's going to be exalted here. And that's what's really interesting about me about this is wait till you see what we're going to see. This moon in Taurus exalted is going to be part of this show. And so, you know, it's about how solid you are within your own value system. So the number one thing I think that's going to affect the world individually is people's self-worth, not their confidence. If anything, everybody's confidence is going to be very Chiron. Like, let me sit and take the confidence beatings so I can be a better guide. But when it comes to our self-worth, the ones that are going to do really good for the next 19 years are going to have high self-esteem that aren't going to worry so much about what everybody thinks, because the big problem is we come now into the Taurus squares to Aquarius. Not so much the Aries and the basic identity with, ooh, if I'm famous or not. No. Am I worried about what other people think about me? Am I worried about, you know, I want my own space. I want my own way, and I don't want to work with a collective. These are going to be major problems that come up, and people who don't want to work with other people have very low, and unfortunately, they have very difficult self-assurance within themselves of their own self-worth, of their own value, and they don't feel comfortable in their own skin. And so really, I think that, you know, if you can start to really believe and to have a better understanding that we are here to connect with others that are just as self-understanding of their values to understand how to use the system that's going to work and parts of the system that's collapsing to move forward with. That's the insight on the last day that an anomaly, and it's also the last day of where it's a normal day of the sun and Pluto together. Like, it's just like, it will never be the same come the 19th. And so I think that this Mercury trine, this moon and Jupiter is amazing for understanding what the universe is giving the gift of. The gift of self-assurance through self-worth, the gift of knowing your talent, knowing how gifted you are, and that the greatest gift that you were given over the 16 years when Pluto came into Capricorn and all the way to where we're at today, the greatest gift of fate and destiny was destiny, and whether or not you owned it, whether or not you knew it and you took it, you took the risk. It was just the other day, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. Yeah, that's right. I updated all this shit. But this is actually from I was in a magazine article a couple years ago, and I put this up on my LinkedIn, and a lot of business people hit me up like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And this has always been my belief about risk, but I'll make it to where you can zoom in and see better. Well, how do I think about risk? Risk taking is something that a lot of people talk about, but it isn't a talking point or a thought. It is an action. I feel risk is the fear before the action taken, or the plunge deep into your truth. In business, there are so many fears. It is when you are fearless that things happen to manifest. But when you do too much risk assessment and thinking things through in today's economy and business world, you are too late. Innovation and not following the path that everybody else is doing is everything. People like to throw the term entrepreneur around because they started a business. If you're a real entrepreneur, you are independently creating a business or businesses that have no other place in the market. You are going about the space alone. There are no seminars, no colleagues, and no handbook to guide you. Risk equals reward, and how I have used risk to play into my life and career is by not being afraid to make decisions and execute them. Every choice I make comes from an overwhelming place of excitement and a gut instinct of hell yes. I have used risk as a catapult to go where nobody has gone, creating my own market, my own businesses, and that everyone will try and copy. It has given me the biggest rewards in my life and continues to. I don't let the glitz and the glams of celebrity or what is cool guide me, because trends are not the place of success. Being niche is not a risk, but a treasure to a successful business, or in this case, even a person. And I want you to take that as that this has been the niche that you are as a soul has been your greatest gift. But you have to own that. Now, I believe in last chances. The universe plays that in life with last chances. I see it all the time in readings, in my own life, and in all ways. This is your last chance to own how niche you are, to own how niche you can be, to own the risk that you must take to own that within yourself. What are the humps that are very deeply repressed that you have to get over? And a lot of it is very simply coming down to self-worth. It's not about self-assurance by how confident you are. Confidence in Aries seems nice, but that's why Saturn is at fall in Aries. And that's what makes it very weird about this moon in Aries finishing in a Taurus that we're going to see as the end of the Sun Pluto of our lives of Capricorn, is that Mars loves Capricorn, not Saturn's house. You would think that Saturn would love Mars's house. No, it doesn't. Saturn likes Venus's house, Libra. Now, why would Saturn not like Mars's house? Because it doesn't know how to make a good risk assessment. It doesn't know value. Aries doesn't know what's good, bad, or valuable at all. It is very primal. It is very, I want it in this moment. It is very much like a dog that just like sniffs and that looks good, I'll eat it now. But it didn't sniff around the whole room to find the better things. So the understanding of having Jupiter with Uranus here in Taurus is have a look around the room. What has the universe given you so much about understanding that niche and that awesomeness of who you are? And this is your last chance, because the way that I've shown the imagery to this deep astrology with the time machine, we're all walking through that. And if you don't think that the last 4 years has been a time machine that they opened and that we've all been going through, well, then, that's fine. But I'm going to let you know that's what's been happening. And so this is your last chance to go through the new version of the Matrix. You either have self-worth and know it, or, you're just going to let the system throw you in it again and be repressed from the gift that has been very clear. And I know it's not been easy for 16 years. A lot of us have gone from, unemployment to building a business out of nothing, to the days when something like Shopify came out, and, building our own websites in the old days, still using HTML, now to where we're at with AI. It's a whole different ballgame. Or apps. I'm surprised not everybody in business has an app, but that's one thing I've learned. Why? And the number one thing that I've heard from every single person that has ever told me why they don't have one is it's either too expensive or they don't understand it. Yet everything has been at the pleasure of your niche and every opportunity of if you own the value. But this has really been about manifestation, and it will continue. But that manifestation energy has been about, do you know how to not only use the system, but use the system to break people out of the system, including yourself? Now, I'm going to just go right into it, but this is where the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life has ever happened in astrology. Friday and Saturday, the 24 hours that you are going to see is going to be the most extreme 24 hours that I have ever seen in astrology, period. Now, I will say that having the Sun conjunct Saturn and Pluto on January 12th in 2020 or 2020 is second now. This is now first place. Okay? So on January 19th, we will be at 29 degrees of Capricorn. Pluto's here. So the beginning of the Pluto conjunction's happening. At that same time, Mercury is finishing its trine to Jupiter. Venus will be an exact square to Neptune in Pisces, which we've already seen Mercury retrograde to go through all that shit. So again, if you don't understand your value and your self-worth here, and you're just stretching for it, you can't deceive yourself. You can't believe in something that you actually don't believe in. Or you can't believe in somebody that you don't believe in. Or you can't believe in some magical power that you have that underneath, you actually don't believe that you have the ability to do it. You can't fake the universe. You can't fake anything. You can't fake, I can do this. And really underneath, you're like, I don't think I can. You have to actually not only just believe it, but have the magic that you just know it. A lot of people have always maybe called me crazy that I expect people, and that's probably one of my problems in life, is I expect people to already know it. I don't know how I knew how to build a computer. I just know how to build it. I don't know how to build an app. I just figured out how to do how to do it. I don't know how to do lives and make it look this badass and clean. I just know how to do it. The second I saw that you could live stream with multiple cameras, guess who was the first motherfucker on the internet? Not just astrologer, but the first people on Facebook lives to ever do it. I bought the $10,000 computer. It was me. And it's one of those things to where it's like, it's fucking easy to see. You can't fake that shit though. And so, maybe that underlying thing that we're coming into, which really, you're going to see this do the weirdest shit you've ever seen in your life. Although the last time we saw anything close to this was Jupiter Saturn, which definitely means that this whole entire understanding since 2020 is about to pop its head, right? The snake is about to pop its head. With the irony here, the end of the year of the rabbit is about to pop out and the dragon's about to pop out, right? Of course, this is Pluto, so this is an extremely transformational moment in time and the last time that you ever see in Capricorn. And you're going to wish, again, one day that you're in the future, you're going to wish that we had all this Capricorn again. You're going to miss it. It's going to be fun surfing the frequencies. But Capricorn's pretty easy. What's the next step? What's the next step? How do I get to the next step higher in my life? It's pretty simple. So if you've had good self-worth and you've known your uniqueness and you've known your value, well, then you graduate on this one. But if you don't, you enter into Aquarius in a very big void. Because what are you taking into it with it? Things that you really don't connect with, things that you repress, that you hold yourself because they're based upon how you were raised as a child. Because what's the opposite of Capricorn? It's Cancer. And so that deals with the mother. Right? How were you mothered? Believe it or not, from a lot of the research I've been learning, thank God to Sophia pointing my way to some of these amazing psychiatrists and psychologists out there who've been doing the research, right? Like, why is it that people that weren't mothered well, especially breastfed, or they were pawned off early to go to, oh, I have a job and I just need to go, bye, right? Why do they all turn out fucked up? Why are all the shooters, all their moms, bad moms that weren't there, pushed them away to go in here and go here. I don't want to be around you. I don't feel connected to you. Attachment issues. Pluto's attachment. And this is the end of people being attached to their career more than how they mother their own kids or how they mother themselves or take care of themselves. Part of taking care of yourself, especially in Capricorn world, is how well that you are taking care of yourself at home and in your personal life. And they both have to work for each other. You have to have a good foundation in order to have a good business. You have to have a good foundation. And that's why I always laughed. People thought that they could run their lives living on the beach with a laptop and run a business. There's no such thing. You only go so far. But this brings up a very deep problem, right? This is where the deepest of all of our stuff is going to be unveiled. For me, I'm blessed that, those scary choices of last year of Sophia and I decided to have a baby, right? It was like, okay, fucking, we're going to go for this. We're going to just go for it and see what happens. And it happened. Well, Aurora was in the womb this time last year. And if I wouldn't be now, and I don't care that I'm sick, because I've never learned more about myself through being a father and through being a parent and having to grow up and knowing how to take care of myself and take care of a partner and take care of my daughter and in every moment, whether it's emotional to physical sickness, whatever it might be, and make sure that I put the highest standard to everything that I do in every place, whether it's work, whether it's my family, whether it's everything. Like, we live in a world now where, those high standards are going to go somewhere in a better, higher frequency. But if you've set the bar so low, you really think that Uranus will just automatically lift you up. If anything, remember that Uranus and his journey is about going down below. His nut sacks get chopped off, and Saturn brings him back down to the ocean, and he gets exiled. And my biggest concern for people is realizing the world's about to see a lot of exiles. And you could feel very void and very exiled, by not dealing with the deep insecurities you have based upon your foundation. That's what it's looking at. If you use even Jeffrey Wolf Green's understanding, the opposite point is 29 Cancer, right? The highest degree of mother aspect. So, all of this is all really dependent on how well your foundation is. All of this is really dependent on how emotional, that you know how to take care of yourself, that you know how to take care of your needs, and more importantly, some people, they push their kids. Like, I'm just, and that's been the number one cause of every problem with children today in their adolescence right now. You're seeing all the adolescents with Pluto and Capricorn that were born 2008 through 2012. Why are they all having the highest rates of suicide? Why are they? It's not just social media. It's been about their parents threw them into a fucking babysitter at 1 year old, at 2 years old. That's what the data says. And that made it very clear as an astrologer. Why did the uptick happen in 2008? Why did the uptick happen in 2009? Now, people thought I had to go work because of the economy, and I have to push my kid off and put him in a fucking preschool, or I need to go put him off into a fucking daycare. Why? People left their morals. Your number one moral that comes before Capricorn is Cancer. Your family, your roots. I know this is probably not where people are expecting to go, but you have to understand with evolutionary astrology, this is where we have to go. That, on this Friday, the 19th, the door is closing. Because what is Pluto? It's death and rebirth. But this is the end of a transit. So with Pluto, it's the death. It brings the end. All right. And as you bring this end in your life of the sun, the awareness about Pluto here, it's going to be looking at how solid is your foundation with your mother, your family, how you take care of yourself, how your attachment style was when you were a baby, how you were in the womb, how all these things. I covered this in my Pluto school. Because remember, if somebody's being born right now, something weird's happening. The dad doesn't want to be the dad, or the mom is trying to refuse the kid without, subconsciously or whatever. And that goes into you when you're born, right? So there's weird shit for anybody pregnant right now about to have a kid. Weird shit always. If somebody's born with Sun and Pluto behind, with the Sun behind, that means something weird was happening right before you were born, right? If it's after, something happened 4 days, 3 days, ago. So we need to remember that there's something very creepy going on where, this can also be the fear of death, but it's really about the rebirth of yourself and knowing how, the way that you have good morals in this life, or that you're able to stay on top of things, which is Capricorn, is based upon how well you're raised. We live in a world now where people, escape where they don't feel they're being connected well and turn, this group into their family or that group into their family. Yet they don't ever want to face the music. And so with the moon in conjunction with Uranus, as we're approaching this conjunction and passing that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and then Mercury finishing its trine to Jupiter, it's a big vision. Are you able to encompass all the great things? Because in Taurus, every part of your first breath on this planet to your last breath, everything that you've had or do have within yourself and physically has to be valued. That includes your parents if they were pieces of shit. That includes every part of your life, and it triggers the shit out of people. This is not something I'm newly saying. This is stuff I talked about a long time ago. But if you're going to master Taurus, and you're going to master Pisces, and you're going to master Capricorn, because that's where the 3 outer planets are. And we have to remember that these are the 3 outer planets that are finishing in these signs. And Pluto's going to be the first one, the longest one out. That if you're going to have any kind of grip on your reality or any kind of fate and destiny in your life, if you don't have a grip on your soul and truly knowing how to surrender and accept and have compassion to even the worst of fucking things that have happened to you, you're never going to heal. And then, of course, with Uranus and Taurus, with Jupiter here, it's like you also have to understand that every part of your life you have to value. And sometimes it's not so much this Uranian effect of like, I need to figure out a solution. It's more like, why haven't you connected the dots to the solution yet? And so Pluto is massively here to reveal this massive part of a repression within you of why haven't you gone farther? Now, for some people, you might be like, I'm fulfilled enough. And that might be true. But what's also true, and I would say more truer, is that there is that understanding and being willing to accept that you could have gone a little farther, because like any race, when you finish, this is really the finish line, right? Capricorn is the finish line, right? It's the top of the mountain. What happens? Pluto starts to fall down from this for the rest of our lives. It will never be at the top ever again. And so we have to remember that as you reach the finish line, where could I have maybe kicked in a little bit harder over the last 16 years? Where could I have pushed a little bit more? Where did I spend too much time fooling around, calling it taking care of myself, but really I was too afraid to take on the work. Why couldn't I have worked and maybe still found a situation, or maybe I could have stayed with my partner and raised a kid better instead of just throwing them in a fucking, here you go, you're going to go be watched by people and have a bad attachment style. And then by 14, the kid's going to fucking be psychotic. Oh, you didn't know that that was part of the astrology? You know, every decision you've made over the last 16 years comes under a deep scrutiny of like, was that a moral thing? Was that a moral thing? So when you think of like something like the Epstein list, and everybody's obsessed with this thing, everybody's obsessed with child trafficking, everybody's obsessed, and I'm not saying don't be. But really, what is it from a simple point of view with Pluto? And I don't think Pluto's ever simple, but it's just Pluto and Capricorn was revealing who's really determined to be of high moral character. And it's in the moments that you don't see. It's not in the moments in the public. The public perspective is being able to see through you and know that behind the scenes, you're probably a big piece of shit. Right? So it's always in the moments when we don't think anyone's looking that we're being tested. That's Pluto's secret over the last 16 years. You know, and it's been really interesting reading all about, especially understanding that opposite point, that influx point there, which is a transformational point, 29 Cancer, that the Sun Pluto's conjuncting. Remember, last year we didn't get this. Remember last year I was like, we get that next year. And that means that when it comes to family, and that's what really people are desiring, right? They want like a nice family, or if you're not in a relationship or your relationship sucks, like everybody wants to be in a nice relationship where they feel like it's home. And not feel like, well, I'm in this relationship just because they do this and they do that, or I'm doing this because I have to, or, you know, like, why are there so many single parents? Why are there so many single moms? Why are there so many people that are single, putting their job before their personal life? It's because they're not ready to let go of their things that are not seen in public morally. You probably still like to go out and fuck people every day. You want your options open. You want control. And so, you know, that's the stuff you have to start looking at. Why haven't I got farther? Why can't it go farther in my life? It's not the universe stopping you. It's your own morals and the stuff that's behind the scenes that you don't want to face. And you got to face them now. And I'm not to cast you down, because I've been there. You know, I have the videos public. I had to quit marijuana to be an astrologer, to do this every day. The first, what was it, like 3 months? I fucking smoked weed every day, you know? And then I remember fucking doing shit and being like, I can't do this. That Pluto and Capricorn hit me hard. And that was back when it was in the first degrees. So, you know, I've lived my life as an astrologer, like, that's not the moral thing to do. That's not the moral thing to do. That's not the moral thing to do. Knowing that at the end of the transit, it only, and this is where the harshest part of Capricorn is, right? Because it's Saturn. Saturn is the actual physical reality of what you're going to get. So guess what? You know, you could try and blame the outside world all you want. But I know the secret as an astrologer, and every other astrologer that really does evolutionary astrology knows the secret, that you have an issue with your personal life, that either you don't understand boundaries, you don't know how to set up a moral compass of boundaries, so you can blame it on, well, this person ruined my life, and that means that, like, what were you guys really doing back there? Probably something not moral. So, you know, this is like harsh, because also the people who you feel are like, why do they get there and I don't? Instead of asking, like, why did they get there? You need to ask yourself what you weren't doing within yourself, or what you morally of character are still have zero boundaries for, that are not taking care of you or not offering the emotion that you want to feel. And this is a big one because it's the last one of your life. You will never, ever get this opportunity to be that raw and honest. And with the sun, when it conjuncts Pluto, you have to be honest. Like, you know, like, especially the last one in Capricorn, and Saturn's in Pisces. So it's a spiritual test. Right? Like, Do you really think the universe is going to let anything that's not spiritual pass through, or anything that's immoral pass through? Especially since Saturn in Pisces is with Neptune, and Neptune's ruler, and there's Venus squaring Neptune. So, all the candy, I'm going to just keep changing relationships, or I'm just going to keep changing, shifting out, or I'm going to buy this and this will make me feel better, or I'm going to just keep being plasticky, or I'm just going to keep buying this to feel better, or this thing will make me feel better spiritually. No, it won't. Never has, or else you would have stopped doing it and it would have done its job already. Right? So it's really interesting to me to see these kind of like, where's the deception within yourself? Where have you deceived yourself? You can't put it on any outside energy because, the example I always get is like, I had an abusive husband. It's like, okay, well, what were the things you were doing with your abusive husband while he was abusing you or before that? Well, he sold drugs. Oh, were you doing the drugs? That's pretty easy. Pluto Capricorn is pretty easy. Like, well, yeah, you chose the partner that you did drugs with, and you think he's a drug dealer, and you think it's not going to turn out that way. Hello. What's the lesson in all this? With Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, and Saturn being the dispositor of Capricorn, and with all these Pisces energy, but all this Capricorn energy, it's who's the mystical sea goat? Who has been able to climb that part that's even more than the mountain itself? Right? Like who spiritually more than just what the universe asks of us? Who goes that extra mile? And you know what? That's the answer to excess deaths. That's the answer to the craziness in the world, is that too many people do not go that, and I'm not saying like you physically have to exert yourself. I'm talking about spiritually go that much farther. And that's a hard one, because that means that the self-worth and the value doesn't value the world, doesn't value people more than your own self. And that's the hardest thing with this North Node and Chiron that's going to be with us throughout January and with us into February for the conjunction. All while this is happening is there's a lot of people who are going to realize that their egos were their worst enemy. That they put their own identity before things, their own ego first, and the ego's not getting fed anything right now. So it's starving, and it's forcing people to have to actually look at, well, can I blame it on this person? Like I've had friends and I've had lovers and I've had everything who were doing the most worst morally thing. But at the same time, I was doing weird morally things with them too. Yeah, I did the drugs with them. Yeah, I did this with them. And then it's like, until you learn the boundary of like, I'm drawing a line and my personal life is more important. And if I'm going to be a father, I'm going to put everything I can into it. And I'm going to also pick a woman who's going to put everything into it. Most likely, I would hope that she would feel the same about me. Instead of, oh, well, I'll accept that you have this problem and this could affect it, but we'll go with it. Like, that's rolling of the dice. And that's where we're moving into. So if you rolled the dice and you didn't really take risk assessment and you didn't follow some sort of risk that had something greater than yourself, greater than your ego, bigger than your ego, right? So that's kind of weird, right? Bigger than my ego. Yeah, the ego's weak. It's small. It's little. It's only tiny. It only thinks about self-serving itself at a buffet. And there's a buffet of things out there. And so this could be a very positive moment for you to put an end to that ego, an end to that serving the most basic version of yourself that's actually starving the greatness in the niche that you are, and being more than just another person that's going to die and be remembered by people who will die and be a number. And I remember in 2019 when I had Sarah Delane, you can go on the interview section that I have all here on High Vibe, and I told her and I told everybody then in 2019, I'm like, the Amazon fire, that's not a big deal. Nobody's gonna remember this. Everybody was making a big deal in 2019. The Amazon's on fire. I said the shit coming is way bigger than that. But I also said in that, I said that the reason people are gonna pass away or leave this planet is because they don't want to be more than just what they think they can be, or more importantly, they are stuck in a system and the ideas of, I just want to do as much as possible. That's it. I don't want to do more. I don't want to go that extra mile. I don't want to go that extra spiritual mile. That's what the mystical sea goat does with all this Pisces and Capricorn. And that comes back to another 2020 alignment. Saturn, when it was in Capricorn, sextile Neptune and Pisces. We'll never see that again in our lives. The two planets in their dignity in sextile. And that's why I was so adamant in 2019 for you to understand this notion. Because now we are, and here's Saturn and Pisces now, dispositing Pluto and the Sun and Mars and Mercury for the last time ever. And it's putting it through a massive test of like, where are you at spiritually? Where's your morals at? Like what, there's a lot of frustrated people at the end of this transit, a lot of Scrooges, a lot of people realizing I fucked up, and you know what? Let that go, but start also honoring it and then start implementing it now. Because Aquarius, and we also have Pluto coming back into Capricorn at the end of this year to give you that last chance. So if you're in that really dark place, or you're in that bad moral place, or you're in that place where that's just not good for you, especially taking care of yourself personally, it drains you, it takes from you, you're trying to self-serve yourself because of your fears or because of just wanting something to feel good. This is your time to say, I'm done. Period. Because not only is this last chance, there are no second last chances. Now, this is where it gets really crazy. So on the 20th, now, that's at 5:45 p.m. Pacific Saturday. But I want to come back to, they're conjuncting. So this is at 10:45 p.m. in the morning, right? Okay. This is now at 5:45 a.m. So in less than 12 hours, we'll see the conjunction, and we're going to see the conjunction be exact at 29:59 of Capricorn. What's really crazy is that's the last place they could have met in Capricorn. Literally. Now, the last time that anything happened like this in our lifetimes, and I'm not talking about Pluto though, but transit-wise, of things meeting at these last degrees here of Capricorn, there's a couple, right? And actually meeting here, because there's a big difference between, like, we'll show you the Jupiter, right? So we'll go to like the aspect of Jupiter and the conjunction to Saturn, which was the big one that we saw in 2020. So they met at 0:29. But if we just move this a day back, right? They were conjuncting for a while, but it was literally Saturn that ingressed in and then Jupiter that came in. So we didn't see a conjunction there. But if I take you to the Jupiter Saturn of 1960, right? I have to pee. I'm sick, by the way, so I've been drinking so much. And I don't drink alcohol, but like water and sports drinks and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. So when Jupiter and Saturn were approaching, okay, now we'll move that Jupiter conjunct Saturn, move it forward. They met at 25 degrees. We've never seen anything meet here. And for shits and giggles, while I go pee, because I have to go right now, I'll give you an example of back in 1287, they met in Aqua, Sun and Pluto. So take a look at this while I go pee, and then we are going to come back in 2 minutes. But I want you to look at this alignment here. This is back in 1278. They met at 0 Aquarius. Now answer yourself the question. That means the Sun met with Pluto there. Okay, we're back here. So pretty interesting to see that, because I did the math and they met in Capricorn at 28 degrees and all the way back in 1287. So that didn't happen then, right? Then you go to the one that happened in 1532. It looks exactly like what we're about to go through, right? Sun conjunct Pluto, 29 degrees, but 16 minutes, meaning Pluto still had weeks to go, month to go. So if you can't say, sure, we've been to 29 degrees, but we haven't been to where they're going to change into Aquarius within the same day. The sun, of course, does, but then, of course, 1778, very close. 2945. But again, Pluto, the speed of Pluto is very slow. So it's only doing 1 minute and 55 seconds, and that's fast. So that 1 minute, that's another 2 weeks before Pluto went into Aquarius. So really, oh, and I did even going all the way back to 1041, right? 1041. And in 1041, 2919. This has never happened before. Okay? Now, I'm sorry. When we get back to where we were at for this one's happening at 29:59. And when we look at the exact sun, we know it's doing a degree in a minute. So we know that the sun just minutes after this will come into Aquarius. But Pluto is at its fast speed and it's doing a minute and 57 seconds. And we only have to go a minute. And that's where the sun just minutes after. So I think I said 5:45 a.m. What's it happening? Yeah, 5:45 a.m. And then at 6:07. So 23 minutes after the sun and Pluto conjunct in Capricorn, for 23 minutes at the dead conjunction, the sun ingresses into Aquarius. And we have the ingress into Aquarius chart. The moon is the crazy one. We're going to see the sun and moon both move into signs together. So the moon is going to be at 29 degrees of Taurus. And this is why I was bringing up that moon in Taurus. An exalted moon, the last moment of your life, seeing the sun with Pluto and Capricorn, with the moon in Taurus exalted, right? In a perfect trine. Okay? Right? So they're trining together. Venus is coming off that square to Neptune. Mercury at 7:43. It's coming back to get out of shadow this week, right? And at 8 degrees. And that's a reoccurrence. I've covered that one in other deep astrologies, right? That's pretty gnarly. And then the sun comes into Aquarius and the moon comes into Gemini. And so we start to see a trine. And that shifts gears now into Mercury, and Mercury's coming to just get out of shadow. And what's crazy is, boom, within literally less than 12 hours. So at 5:45 a.m. Pacific, and then at 4:56 p.m. Pacific, you will have seen the sun conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and then the sun and Pluto in Aquarius. But the actual conjunction is going to happen in Capricorn, but you're in both in 12 hours, less, 11 hours. And with the moon trining both. And moving signs. The sun and moon move at the same time. And then this is where it's a reoccurrence of what we saw all the way going back to 1287, 1532, 1041, 1778, and 2024 being the anomaly of both in one less than 11-hour period. The tightest and most significant shift from Saturn's world into Uranus's world, right? So this is a completely the most radical change, and this is going to set forward the craziness of the world, because Uranus is just sitting here ready to station direct, and when these conjunct, Mercury will be back and it's out of shadow, and it recurs at the 8. If you don't remember this, I have it on here. This is why, if you're not in the schools, you could be learning so much about reoccurrences, right? Right. So this is what I said. The portal door opening, the confirmation in the hypergate, Mercury retrograded this year, or sorry, in 2023, right? In December at 8:29. Mercury last year, at the beginning of the year, went direct at 8:08. This was the signal, and the Sun and Pluto met at 28 degrees of Capricorn. Then, when the Sun and Pluto are here from Sun last, Pluto Capricorn, Sun Pluto Capricorn, and then moving into here, this is a reoccurrence that's happening within a year's time. Mercury being at this degree of 8 more than just one time in a year, more than just 2, 3 times. And it just so happens during the Sun Pluto of last year and the Sun Pluto of this year. And then the retrograde happens when we're in Sag, building up towards it. Then you look at Nostradamus's charts, and there's Saturn that sits there. That's a whole nother crazy thing. But you also see that Saturn was at the exact same degree, 5 degrees Pisces, where it will be for this one, right? But in 1994, when the Sun and Pluto met at the end of Scorpio. So it's kind of crazy, because if you really think about it, like in Hypergate, these are all about signals of when the world's going to change and when X events are going to happen. And you're already seeing disease X, right? We have to be prepared. Same way I prepared you in 2020. Although disease X is not some new disease in the way that they're making you to think of it. It's the disease they created within people. That's how they're going to deal with it. The biggest cover up, that they're going to try and deal with it and say it's something else when it really is not. So you have nothing to fear if you didn't walk down those fucking gates of morality that you knew weren't, you know, you can't blame, well, I was coerced, my job, my this. This is where my harsh Capricorn lesson is going to be like, you know, I don't care what anybody says in life, you know, you hold your ground on your moral ground. That's why I said, if you do not understand, shut up or wake up. This was me writing this on 12/20. But here's that Sun Pluto that we're in, and what's happening at that time. We look back at the Sun Pluto that was in 94 and the last one in the 95, right? Where, again, Pluto was already in Sag. This is not something normal that we've seen. It was a new moon that happened at the end of Scorpio with Pluto going back into 95. But in 94, it was literally Sun, Pluto in Scorpio, and Saturn was at 5 degrees. And what I'm saying is the buildup after this event, this X event is going to begin. And I didn't know anything about disease X. It was not being pushed like you've been seeing it the last 2 weeks. This is, that's why I receipt everything. This is 12/20/23. That I said that the X event was about to begin. Because then the new moon in Aquarius will happen. And then when the Sun conjunct Saturn for the first time since the 90s, since the last Sun Pluto that happened in Sag and in Scorpio. And now this will be a Saturn in Pisces that's witnessing a Saturn that's in Pisces with Sun Pluto in Capricorn, and then Sun Pluto in Aquarius on both fronts. So there's something about Saturn in Pisces that has a very weird reoccurrence happening with watching the world go through its biggest transformations. That the X event is going to begin and bring us all the way into the following years. Of course, I use a lot of Nostradamus' stuff. And then I also use the chart of in 2020, 2 degrees Pisces retro. Look at the stories in 2024. You will see Y equals X 25, if you understand that. But this is where the stories that are being brought out right now about COVID in 2020 is the same play that Saturn's covering this zone, and the Sun and Saturn and Mercury are going to conjunct, that you're going to hear the whole world go back to COVID, but about disease X. And remember that during COVID, all that shit was about Saturn coming into Aquarius. Well, now it's Pluto in Aquarius. Now it's the Sun in Aquarius, and they're actually going to both be there together. Technically not in a dead exact conjunction, but they're going to be conjunct after they conjuncted in Capricorn. So the last big power play is this 2024. The last big grab, and then also the biggest grab for people's desperation for freedom that we're ever going to see in our lives. That's what we have to prepare for. I mean, I'm being very transparent with you that based off the work that I've been doing in Hypergate and the work that I have done with astrology for so long, and this is not to trigger anybody, because I believe that anybody can make it through this. Again, I believe it's if you have it in your soul to want to do more than just live this life, right? The basic bullshit. But I feel 100% that disease X is the biggest cover-up to what happened with the injections of the disease they created in people and what's spreading around. And, you know, that's why even on my yearly, I brought that up about Dr. Gert's work to also get the scientific opinion to show you that we're talking about DNA transformation, which is what Pluto and Aquarius is too. You know, remember that the photon belt sits in Aquarius and it sits in Leo, and Leo rules the blood, but the innards of the blood, the DNA itself, is the strands, and the strands deal with Uranus, and that deals with Aquarius. So now that Pluto and the Sun are moving over this space, and the fact that the Sun's going to meet with Saturn and Mercury here in the month coming up here, after these events take place, that the beginnings of this X point are going to happen. And I've predicted the chart. I can show you that the signal secret is exposed on February 28th into the 29th, which is a leap year. Remember, same thing. 2020 had a leap year. We're in a leap year, and we're in a quantum leap, right? So, so we need to remember that this stuff's going down. I also show right here the light of the antesia of the Sun and Pluto where it's meeting. So if I take you back into what is antesia? Well, if the Sun and Pluto are at 0 Aquarius, you always look at Scorpio. That means they're at 29 Scorpio in antesia, right? So this Sun Pluto now go to 29 Scorpio, which makes sense if you understand antesia. But when they're in Capricorn, okay, so we'll go to the conjunction that's happening first on Saturday and then happening again, right? The antesia of Capricorn always is the sign next door because it's the same light. So 29 Capricorn is 0 Sag. So the whole Pluto Capricorn has been that happy-go-lucky, well, at least it always kind of works out, because the antesia is the same light in the same spot, right? So yeah, it's winter in Capricorn with the Sun, but the end of fall is the fall of the Sun. And even if the Sun's rising higher in Capricorn, it's the same amount of light. So you have to realize that we are also shifting antesia to Pluto coming to 29 degrees of Scorpio with the Sun. And the last time that those two met at that spot was back in 1994. And so if you take the Saturn transit that we're in, and they happen to be repeating, and when the Sun and Saturn meet, that the X event, ironically here on X, I've predicted in Hypergate that the X event will happen and feel like a repeat of everything that you saw, but in a crazier way. And that's how you know it's connected. Is I tell people to look at the stories, right? And so Y equals X 25. Well, Y is 20. It's the 20th Greek letter, right? And the Y really is also Aries. So if you understand the Aries, North Node Chiron, okay, that's coming together while the Sun, Saturn, and Mercury. And that North Node will be at the exact point of that 15 degrees and 17 degrees of Aries. That happened with the Pluto-Uranus squares of 2012 through 2015 and the lunar eclipses of 2014. And everything that you saw there from Russia to Ukraine was 2014. The weird shit before Trump ran and the weird shit that was going on with Hillary and trying to make her own mark. And, you know, we don't realize all the rifts that are happening. But I believe that the big event that is going to change the world, that will be at its most craziest point, is in 2025 during the Pisces balsamic dark moon eclipse in Aries that will literally be on Nostradamus's chart of warning, which will be right near the Venus retrograde of that chart in the opposition of Venus in opposition to Mars retrograde that he predicted in 1555 to use as a guide for the future and prophecies. And now I'm updating that to understanding to see such a, I know that it's complex, but it's everything from the Antesia, the understanding that the Antesia of Pluto is at 29 Sag while the Sun goes to 0 Scorpio. So the Sun squares, or 29 Scorpio, that the Sun squares that point. But at the same time, it's intense because they both switch. And it also is at the same time the weird, that's why I do an Aries, that's the sign of Aries, right? It looks like that of Sun Pluto at 0 Aquarius, but before that, just 11 hours prior, it's the last Sun Pluto and Cap. So that defines an Aries, and Aries at that time when all this is happening, it is North Node Chiron. So it's dealing with some sort of handicap aspect, some sort of human sacrifice, because that's what Chiron's about, this mortal sacrifice to become immortal. And it's scary because you know, if you know your self-worth and you know your value, then you don't do anything that would compromise yourself. And you also put everything to do more to be here. Again, I believe it's a soul thing, not a physical thing. But I also show people the reoccurrence of Gemini, which is interesting that when the Sun Pluto come and meet in Aquarius during this week, the moon will come into Gemini and be passing over for the whole Sun Pluto in Aquarius. It'll cross this 8-degree mark where Jupiter retrograded in 2012. That's the beginning. Mars retrograded and came direct at 8 degrees. Then last year in January 12th, 2023, then the Pluto-Neptune conjunction in retrograde happened at 8 degrees all the way back in the 1800s. And then Venus and the stations of Venus happened in 2004, 2012 from 9 to 7, and the midpoint was 8 Gemini. And so when you now go back and you actually look at the reoccurrence here and you see the moon, here's the moon in Gemini, here's the Sun Pluto in Aquarius, here's the moon at 5 degrees, and that Sun is still at 0:27. So that means there's still half a day left, and there's 6 hours for that the moon is going to reoccur. And I believe that there's going to be a massive story that is going to be the beginnings, let's call them the precursors to the X, when that moon moves to 8 degrees. When we see that 8-degree moon, this is also going to be Mercury coming off that 8 degree and the same reoccurrence. This is the biggest reoccurrence we've ever seen in our lives. This is the biggest moment that is going to transpire for the rest of our lives, and just the beginnings of it. And Saturn is reoccurring for the last time that there was a Sun Pluto in Scorpio, and that is now at the exact Antesia point of where the Sun Pluto in Aquarius is. And Venus is on the galactic center at 27 degrees, and it's with the South Node, and that's dealing with all the dark beings and all the people down there, and people are putting their values and putting their positivity into a dark force instead of having a better understanding of discernment of where they put their energies and where they put their understandings of things. And that's quite extreme. It's not repeating the CV shit again. Like I've predicted, there's not going to be a lockdown. If anything, it would be a military but like martial law. But if anything, it's the beginnings of a cover up that can't be covered up anymore. And it also is you're on to defend yourself, you know. And that's why I said 20 minutes ago with the Sun Pluto, you can't blame anything on anybody else in your personal life. Because now with the Sun Pluto going to conjunct for the first time in our lives in Aquarius, and remember, that has not happened at 0 degrees. Okay? That has not happened in our lives for 800 years. Okay? That's when the Knights Templar were done. They had to get out. You want me to give you some history? I already did all this history, but so this also means that what's happening right now in the wars in the Middle East is not going to be good, because I'll just show you that from a standpoint of, yeah, here we go. I think they have it under Middle East here, Europe, and then England, and then Middle East. Yeah, there was Arghun Khan, the Mongolian ruler, who sends an embassy under Raban Bar Sama and with the mission of contracting a military alliance with the Mamluk Sultanate and to take the city of Jerusalem. He travels with a large routine bearing gifts and letters and 30 riding animals from Tarbes through Armenia. Bar Soma arrives in Constantinople and receives an audience with the emperor. The Mamluk forces under Sultan Qalawun, the victorious, capture Latakia and then the last remnant of the Principality of Antioch. The city port falls easily into the hands, but the defenders retire to the citadel at the mouth of the harbor. Finally, Qalawun forces the Crusader garrison to surrender on April the 20th. So it looks like we're about to witness a surrender in a way that you wouldn't believe, right? How are the Knights Templar going to surrender Jerusalem? Right? In Asia too, there's massive, this was the weirdest one. You want to see this? And maybe it was in 1532, but if I remember right, it was in this one. It's pretty wild. Oh no, it's not there. Excuse me. So that's the 1287. If I do the 1532, of course, I've covered some of this stuff before, but I wonder if they have the, where was the date of the, I feel like it was back. I think it's no irony, but this is, of course, older calendar. July 23rd, the Nuremberg religious peace is granted to members of the Shalmalkitic League, granting them religious liberty. Anne Boleyn is created the Marquess of Pembroke by her fiancé, King Henry VIII. Henry VIII grants the Throne brothers a royal charter to found Bristol Grammar School. This was the craziest one. The Paris Parliament has the city's beggars arrested to force them to work in the sewers chained together in Paris. So, they don't like to talk about that one. You notice they don't bring that one up. But that happened in Paris, right? And if you see, like, that's why I always am very concerned about people with Pluto and Aquarius, because, you know, I'm just going to use history. people who set themselves up in Pluto Capricorn, which I can say that I fucking used my voice for fucking over 12 years every day to get you to put yourself in the best place and to get rid of all of your insecurities and all your weird shit. But anybody that's just going to be out there kind of like frolicking around over this next year, they're going to begin this force work to fix things that are going to be problems, right? And they chain them together in Paris. There was also battles in the Incas. Of course, the church was no longer the same ever in England and never part of the Catholic Church ever again. Oh yeah, I think it's under this date. It's unknown on the, if I go back to the 1287. Oh, there's also weird shit about the Pope. He dies after his 2-year pontificate at Rome. During his reign, he tried to restore Sicily to the papal vassalage, but Honorius clashes with King Peter III the Great, who supports the Sicilian independence. There's something here, though, about China and their biggest armies of all time being created, close to 1.2 million Chinese soldiers. And I feel like we're about to see the beginning of the Chinese wars begin. Maybe that was the 1770. Oh, you know what? It was the 1041, which I think that's pretty wild. Yeah, it is. Yep. The number of enlisted soldiers in the Song Dynasty Chinese military reaches well over 1.25 million troops, an increase since 1022. There were 1 million soldiers. So when you start, why I'm using the imagery of like, this is all the time compressed into one. Like, if you think the Chinese situation is just going to go away, it's insane. Right? They come up in the Mongolian Wars. They're the ones who help take over Jerusalem, right? So it's a king from the Mongols, right? That's the Mongolian Empire. So to think that the Chinese aren't working with the Middle East right now, you're crazy, because they are. Right? So all the propaganda that you're seeing with Neptune and Pisces, like, oh, look at the Gaza thing and all that shit, it's all fucking the Chinese working with the fucking Middle Eastern to convert you to be a fucking Muslim without you thinking it. Remember, it's all about once they take over, whoever takes over the Holy Land, you all get converted, right? So you have to be careful of people trying to convert you. This is going to be gnarly shit. Okay? It's not for the weak. It's not for the people who can't handle the information. Then you go to 1778, right? And South Carolina becomes the first state to ratify the Articles of Confederation. So even though the Declaration of Independence was done, the beginnings of the Article of Confederation began in the middle of the second year of the Revolutionary War. It's also the same year that right at the beginning, February. So right after this is when Pluto comes into Aquarius, is when the sun is in Aquarius. And then in American Revolutionary War in Paris, the Treaty of Alliance and the Treaty of the Amity and Commerce are signed in the United States and France, signaling official French recognition of the new republic. And this is where they arrive at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania and begin to train American troops. George Washington approves the dishonorable discharge of Lieutenant Frederick Gothard Inslin for attempting to commit sodomy with John Mohort, a soldier. They start speaking about incoherently against the granting of independence to the American colonies, but collapses during the debate and dies 5 weeks later. What have you been seeing in the world? Everybody needs to get the vax, and then they pass out. Now you're going to see a big person screaming to not grant independence to people and die. King George III appoints the 5-member of the Carlisle Peace Commission to present peace terms to negotiate to an end to the rebellion of the Britain's 13 colonies, and they don't. So when I see this whole war happening in Israel and everything, and everybody's like, they got to do peace or whatever, like I think what people aren't realizing on the bigger stretch of it all is that you have China working with Iran, which is proven. I already proved that in 2022. They made their big military deal. And Iran just struck the region, finally, its own Revolutionary Guard, ironically, same name, Revolutionary Guard, though. So you have a bigger thing, and that's what this is about to expose, that it's all been bigger than you realize. It's not so lost in the media the way that you get caught up, right? There's too many hidden things. There's too many people not doing moral things. There's too many things that people know that they don't want other people to know, whether it's interdimensional UFOs and interdimensional beings unless you are smart enough to use the astrology and just like I've done and show you for many weeks, especially months, that Iran and China made a big deal in 2022 militarily that they never have before. And then you start seeing Iran popping off missiles, China trying to act like they're a peacekeeper while they're fucking funneling all this shit. Like, this ain't a joke. So to have all these are the years that the sun, Pluto do what we're seeing, but they take longer. And for it to happen within 11 hours, meaning that the compression of time is quicker, that these events all in all these years I'm showing you are all compressing over this next new moon into when we see that sun conjunct Saturn that's going to happen here on the leap year day. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and this might actually tickle some people's fancies, but in 1532, when Henry VIII did his big shift and all that, it was the year of the dragon. And that's the year we're coming into. And so secession, right? Schisms from church. I mean, what would every church do if the Holy Land was taken by the Muslims fully? And what if the Bible doesn't go in the way that it's supposed to say? Right? You know, all it does is just, it's like a safeguard for the religion to be like, well, if anybody takes it over, they're the Antichrist. So everybody that's Middle Eastern is Antichrist now. That's what you're going to start seeing, is people actually believing that anybody who's Middle Eastern is Antichrist. And you have to be smart enough to be like, we're all human beings, and that shit's crazy. And people are going to get fucking lost in this kind of shit. We have to remember at this time that the big schism was, including in England, right? It was like, are you Catholic? If you're Catholic, you're no good. You know, you're a traitor. You need to be a Church of England. So we're about to see schisms like we've never seen before. And especially religious ones. That's the one thing that keeps popping up. Or the weather. And in 1278, which this is going to blow your mind. Oh, no, sorry, 1280. Is it 12? 1287. Yeah, 1287. All right. Watch this. You're not going to believe this, but it actually happened. A huge storm, and this is very connected to my ancestry, which I think is really weird. December 14th, a huge storm-associated storm site in the North Sea and English Channel known as St. Lucia's Flood in the Netherlands kills thousands and reshapes the coastline of the Netherlands and England. In the Netherlands, a fringing barrier between the North Sea and a shallow lake collapses, causing the 5th largest flood in recorded history, which creates the Zolderdijk Inlet and kills over 50,000 people. It also gives sea access to Amsterdam, allowing it to develop an important port city, which Amsterdam, actually, it turns into a positive that they become the Flying Dutchman and the greatest traders of the last 1,000 years. But it kills 50,000 people and it changes the coastline forever. Right? So you need to remember that these are the events that are coming. It's not because of like, well, they're manipulating the weather. Sure. But Pluto is going to always outdo everything. Right? So it changes the coastline. Remember, dikes had to be put up. And today, Holland still has dikes up. Right? So Holland used to be together. The fucking flood comes and opens up the portways. And guess what happens? They become the Flying Dutchman, but 50,000 people die in it. It's not a very easy event. And you see it throughout all of this. And then we were talking about France earlier. Oh, fucking this Rabin Bar Sama arrives in France and is receiving an audience by King Philip IV the Fair. He spends 1 month at the royal court. During his stay, Philip himself escorts him around the Saint Chapelle or the Holy Chapel to see the collection of the Passion relics by the late King Louis IX, the saint. Philip gives Bar Sama many presents and sends one of his noblemen, Gobert de Helleville, to return with him to the Mongol lands. In response, he attempts to form a military alliance with France and England. So, you know, when shit starts going down, I wouldn't be surprised with the way that things are at right now, that France and America align. The other thing was the Mongolian invasion of Poland. And I've been saying that this is what you're going to see. Same Uranus transit of World War II. Same Sun Pluto year of fucking 1287. An invasion in Poland that triggers world events and invaders and devastated by the invaders. And I've made my warnings very clear for 4 years if you're in these areas to leave. In England, the South England flood. A large storm hits the coast and has a powerful effect on Clink ports, and that's the same one, right? Okay. Like, this is also the Scottish rebellions that are happening. So everywhere about this is going to be all of this into one. And I've given you the reoccurrences. I've shown you how rare the transit is. When we get to Sunday, the sun will get to 1 degrees and Pluto will be at 001. Now, we already saw that happen in 2023 with Pluto, but we have not seen the sun with Pluto yet in Aquarius. What's also interesting to me is Mercury is out of shadow. Venus is at 28 degrees of Sag, off the square, but still finishing in Sag. That's dispositing over to Jupiter. Saturn's at 5 degrees now of Pisces. Neptune's still at 25.5. North Node's 19, and not much changes. So there's this really long pause from Friday to Sunday of like us going through the fucking portal. And this is how it all is coming into effect. You know, I thought in a really weird way, the way that Trump just won Iowa caucus is the same way that everybody think that he's some other thing. If anybody is channeling Prince Henry King Henry VIII is Trump. Let's get rid of the deep state, get rid of the piece of shit, and and the same shit. Had many wives, weird shit. That all the characters of the Knights Templar to the fucking the English, the French, the same two that America had to deal with at the beginning of the Revolutionary War is all coming together in helicopter form now, and all coming together in this crazy moment. And so if you were to kind of do a past life regression on these things, you'd be like, fuck, like, is Trump really Henry VIII again? Is fucking all these battles between all these holy wars, all these people again fighting for this shit? And what's the sad part is that in the Holy Lands, they lose. Even in World War II, it wasn't until after World War II that finally, you know, Israel is created, right? So we have to remember that, like, there's something about World War II being a lot more than just what we thought. It's also about Israel becoming its own state, and it's a contested place, and these are going to be things that are all going to clash. What we don't know and what we're trained in is like the Mongols at that time, the 1.2 million Chinese soldiers back in 1287. To have an army like that, you have to remember, even in Napoleon's time, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 is like the max amount of troops a country has. So to have a Chinese empire 800 years ago have 1.2 million troops. And remember, who has the most amount of troops besides the Western countries? And the Western countries don't have a lot. Fucking China. So this is where the world's going to be lopsided on its head, and it's a time portal, and then it does have a different feeling about it. It does have a much more not so Saturnian vibe, but we have to remember too that Saturn is also the ruler of Aquarius, and so there is a Saturn that it's not going to be easy. It's going to come with determination. It's going to come with having to work with other people and which people to trust and which people to not trust, and you're going to have better discernment by paying attention to your morals and compass and values in your personal life, because the opposite of this Sun Pluto is now going to be on Leo, right? So Leo now is the spot. Like, if you're going to connect with people, is it from the heart? Do you know how to love yourself? Do you know how to shine bright, or are you just fitting into the crowd? Do you know how to have true courage in your heart? Because courage is not Aries. Aries is confidence, but courage is something that is found within and something that is everlasting and is what always wins, right? You can't stop somebody's courage, but you can stop somebody's confidence. You can take away their girlfriend, you can cut off their dick. You know, you can do these kind of things, but courage, you can take everything away from a Leo, and a Leo will fucking still love or have the passion to do it, right? So we're in a world that's going to feel the farthest away from Leo, the same way that it's felt the farthest away from Cancer, if comfortable. It's not going to be as fun. So when you think of entertainment, or you think of clubs, or you think of, because look at Saturn in Leo, right? I've always said this. When Saturn was in Leo back in 2005, 2006, and 2007, that was the beginning of the Vegas clubs and clubs and clubs and clubs, and all these people going out more and doing this life and reality shows and all this thing. That's all coming out. It's over. That's the peak. Also, Pluto in Leo was the beginnings of suburbia. So when you hear 15-minute cities, that is very plausible. And to be built with people in shackles from the beggars. Why do you think they have all the homeless people out? Somebody's going to come along and say, I fixed the homeless problem. They're all going to go build these 15-minute cities. I've solved the migrant problem. We're going to chain them, and we're going to fix them all. We're going to have them build things. What do you think? The infrastructure bill, none of that money has been divvied out. And do you see the roads change? Do you see new bridges? Do you see any of that shit? No, they've been waiting. Why did all these countries bring in these migrants? It's the same way that in France, they took all the beggars off the street and chained them up into the sewers. Go clean the sewers. So, you know, you don't want to be homeless during this time, because that's the other thing, is like, we all have to have jobs and we all have to have things. And Capricorn will like stamp a big lesson. Like, you can keep blaming on your outside circumstances, but it's within yourself. I was homeless and I fucking figured it out doing this. So, you know, like, trust me, I've been there. But it's interesting to see that we come into Sunday with all shit on, but I would pay attention to Saturday with this conjunction happening in both signs and with Venus square Neptune, because whatever you're going to start committing yourself to, you got to see, like, what's the alternative that's actually trying to be revealed here, or what's the underlying thing that's trying to be revealed here. It's not about being a detective, but it is Sun conjunct Pluto, and it's changing signs. So it's like, you know, be very wary of what's coming in and how much that you have to give of yourself and what's the real situation going on. I think transparency is the best thing, and asking for transparency, especially with Pluto and Aquarius. It's about, you know, you don't want to be too extreme, but you got to be willing to be like, hey, can you be transparent of where your expectations are of me and you and where this is going in the future? That's Aquarius. That's not Capricorn. Capricorn is self-reliant, my family and my foundation, and I'm getting the best position. I can tell you that I'm your friend, and I can tell you all that shit, but if I'm gunning for the best position for my family, at the end of the day, I'm going to take it. How many people do that? Like, well, I know, like, I don't know where they asked me to take the promotion, and so, yeah, I'm going to have to move, but it was nice knowing you, and they take the job. Aquarius is like, where is your intentions for me and you and the future? And are you a friend or are you an enemy? Because Pluto is now going to start to reveal who the enemies are. The enemies of people, the enemies of groups. And with Uranus and Taurus, that always is the most, I think, the harshest aspect, because Uranus is at its fall here. And this is where you see the most with combined Neptune in Pisces, which deals with segregation. It deals with separatism. It deals with countries saying no. It deals with world governments being disbanded. It deals with alliances being disbanded, and ones that you never thought would come together, coming together, and people trading teams. So you have to remember that even though it might look bad about all these situations, at the same time, remember that Uranus and Jupiter have a big gift for us, which probably the gift is more an alliance that we thought was going to take us out chooses one side chooses the other to be friends because it's more beneficial for the future for them, that they didn't realize now in the Capricorn energy. I also think with this whole Trump stunt, of the Iowa thing, remember that's Capricorn. So it's kind of one of those weird things where it's like, that's what it looks like now, but in a week from now, different story. The whole what's Biden doing and all that, that's going to be a different story too. And I've made this prediction a long time ago. I think that Hunter Biden's going to flip on his father to save his own ass, because Pluto's now going to be fucking with Aquariuses. Last chart, Monday. Now that moon finishing in Gemini and opposing Venus, and Venus's last day in Sag before it comes into Capricorn. Mercury's out of shadow. Mars is flying by. Mars is going to start squaring the nodes, start squaring Chiron as we come into the next week. And what is this sun doing? It is now in between the Pluto Saturn after having a sun Pluto twice in two signs. So we're going to feel like we're in the crunch. And that's why when the sun conjunct Saturn in Pisces, that's going to be the first time since the 90s when the sun Pluto ended in Scorpio and moved in between to Sag, and we're seeing the same thing again. But that's where that beginning of that X shit starts to happen, that you're going to start to hear the calls of weird shit all start happening through this cycle of this weekend, but mainly Monday. And especially when this moon in Gemini opposes Venus, and then the moon comes into Cancer. And what's weird about that? There's no more Pluto there. Now it's going to be the moon in Leos that are going to be in opposition to all this Pluto and Aquarius for more than half of this year. And then for the rest 19 years forward. And this is also Venus changing signs, and the dispositor is the South Node, and the South Node is still being very negatively affected. And we also have Mercury, Mars that are getting ready to conjunct, and they're going to be in conjunction and square to the node. So there's going to be a shot word heard around the world without Pluto there. It's going to expose things in the reality of the situations, and how dire they are and how gnarly they are all going to be beginning their exposure, as Aquarius is going to use Pluto to be like, where the people are going to be desperate for solutions. The same way they were with Saturn and Aquarius, the same way they were with Jupiter and Aquarius, the same way they were with Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius. And now that sun Pluto has now activated Jupiter, Saturn, and Jupiter, Saturn are finishing a separating sextile, right? And Taurus and Saturn here, right? And Pisces. So, there's not a lot of solid ground anymore. And everything's going to feel very shifty. And at the same time, very much a wake-up call to Uranus, which is not direct yet, but will wake up in a quincunx to the South Node in that weekend that then comes up. And then it's going to be next level of craziness of life. And the craziness is that the world will never be the same. Why? Well, on January 22nd, that Monday, Pluto is now officially in Helio forever and will never be in Capricorn ever again. So remember, on Earth, it'll come from Earth looking like it's coming back to the last degree of Capricorn, September, October, November. But in Helio, from the sun's point of view, it will be in fucking Aquarius forever. Not forever, but for the next 20 years. So that's the point to where the helio, the sun chart, and the earth chart have aligned with a conjunction. And now the earth in Leo is looking at a Pluto in Aquarius, right? And all the planets are. It's also really interesting to me to see the Neptune come to 27 degrees of Pisces. This is a very extreme degree, especially when you understand Ptolemy's degree. This is a Saturn decan. We've been in at 26, but when you hit 27, it becomes way more extreme. The last 5 degrees, especially the 4 degrees of Pisces in Ptolemy's decans, is the very most harshest one, and the 27th degree is extremely harsh, especially since it's going to be in sussy quadrats to Venus and Scorpio, and here's Mercury and Venus. Mars is ingressing into Capricorn, and we are seeing a lot of weird aspects. Mars and the Earth making a weird quincunx as Pluto. I mean, this is just the weirdest chart I've seen. Saturn, of course, now at 8 degrees of Pisces, and Jupiter and Uranus getting closer. And yeah, talk about a whole new world. I know that people are out there going to say, you got to wait till November. That's the end point of all end points, right? The last chance. This has sealed the deal from a helio perspective, and it's sealed the deal from a sun perspective, a Mars perspective, a Mercury's perspective. Like the sun and Mercury are not conjuncting at all in Capricorn. They're going to conjunct in Aquarius. Mars Venus is going to happen in Aquarius again. This is no longer a Capricorn show. That's why I told you, like, the end of this Capricorn show is the sun Pluto. And that's this week, and it's over. All you have left is a planet from an Earth's point of view coming back in for a second, while Pluto's is in Aquarius and Helio forever in our lives, okay, for the next 20 years. So it's never coming back into Capricorn. So there's a lot about understanding, you know, you just go back to the old days of, you know, you go 16 years ago, right? And you go to Pluto at 29 Sag, right? Put yourself at the beginning of 2008, right? And put yourself into, by that next month, Pluto, right? February of 2008, there's Pluto and fucking Capricorn, 0 degrees. And if you want to go a month back, there's the sun, there's Pluto. We go one more month back and we see the sun and Pluto. And look at this. You see what I'm trying to say? Do you remember where your life was in 2008? The sun and Pluto met at 28, not at 29. They both didn't move together. The end of Pluto Sag, it didn't do that. You've never seen this before. This is an anomaly that is going to blow all of our minds. And that was with Jupiter that ingressed into Capricorn, then Mercury, and then the sun crossed Pluto, and that was setting us all up in the Christmas of 2007. And it would never be the same for that. But that's a minor, it will never be the same. This is, it will never be the same ever, ever, ever of the world we know. And that we knew, very Sag. Ever again. If anything, it brings us back to the beginning in 1995 when Pluto was at the beginning of Sag, where now that's a nice sextile to that point, and it's a big reflection, and Saturn's reoccurring at the same space. So, how weird that was a moon in Taurus. But the sun, Pluto in Aquarius is not. It's a moon in Gemini, so we got a lot of heady and different spaces and psychological, and that was the same. That's a Mars retrograde in Cancer, and that's the one that is coming up in 2026. The one that's coming up this year is from Leo into Cancer. The one in 2026 is Cancer and through Cancer. So and Saturn in opposition to where it's going. I mean, I can't make this shit up. So, and when you think of the world of you know, where you just do a news story of like that conjunction, right? You can do December 20th, 2007 news. What was happening in the news? There was a violent incident in New Orleans. The 2008 presidential election, Tom Takano withdraws as candidate from Republican nomination and endorses Mitt Romney. The U.S. $8 billion buyout of the Tribune Company is completed. At 81 years, 7 months, and 29 days, Queen Elizabeth II became the longest-lived British monarch, surpassing the Queen Victoria. A 6.8 earthquake strikes New Zealand. Sean Hoy is found non-guilty of all 56 charges of him relating to the 1998 Oma bombing. The New York Post, December 20th, 2007. You haven't seen anything like this since then. Right? Like, caught on tape, Paramount Veep. The movie business is worse than the business of her alleged boyfriend. Alleged New Jersey mobster Joseph Perma, Paramount Vice President Pamela Abbey tells Perna in a wiretap conversation released. Same shit. It's Pluto shit. This isn't new. Oh, the Hollywood thing. Shit's been coming out with Pluto and Sag. Pluto just brings out wherever the immorals, government, everything like that. But people kind of overlook it in Sag. They're too busy with their beliefs and whatever they want to feel good with. Attention, procrastinating present givers. Gift guide addendum. White Christmas and fantasy forecasts. If Tom Brady, a kid in town, weather to practice, inside or out, last minute game gifts. Look at that. Was when BioShock was around. Project Runway was new. Cruise report, deal of the day. Win means nothing. Star report. Model. Oscar watch. No Saint Nick. Pity woman. Feel like a big fat loser this holiday season? Remember Jupiter. Caution, it's long and cutesy. It's never going to be the same. Like this feels so distant. They weren't talking about everything about the world. Let's just take one look right now. So this is New York Post, and this is what the world was. Like, oh, it was lighter. Well, you take the news today, and it's all about the intensity and the gravity of situations, because that's what Capricorn's about, and Aquarius is about the solutions. Israel war in Gaza enters its most perilous phase yet. No food, no water, no heating. Famine exists in Gaza. Haley turns fire on Trump as GOP primary shifts to New Hampshire. A new child tax could pass this month. Here's what it would do for low-income families. Why cold weather doesn't mean climate change is fake. The drug decriminalization fight, rolling Oregon. And what comes next? Uber shutting down popular billion-dollar service. What? Uber Eats? Oh, Uber Cab. Oh, yeah. Uber Eats. Uber Eats is done. So it's already happening. Right? There's a new wave of death at the end of consciousness. People have completely forgotten how to behave at work. It's because they don't want to work there. America is headed for a major wealth shift by 2030. Ultraviolet light can kill almost all the viruses in a room. Why isn't it everywhere? You know, there's not going to be hand sanitizer anymore. Everything's going to be ultraviolet. U.S. forces recovered Iranian warheads in Naval SEAL mission gone awry. It's all set up. It's already set up, but it was a different world, and you see the world change forever, because if you just like think of by the time that you got to January, right? Like let's say the degree, you know, like actually technically, yeah, let's just do January, like I don't know, 10th of 2008 news, right? Things shifted very deeply with Pluto, right? Call your lawyer. No punishment for Isaiah ejection. Oscar watch. Man shot to death at stereo. Too comfortable at practice. T.O. saved for Aikman won't blame Tiki. Golf Channel suspends anchor. O'Hara back at practice. Might be best fit for Santana. Mets fit. Da, da, da. Right? It's just a different world already. It's not like... It was the Oscars then. Barack kicks up the Hills turf. And, you know, it was like Apple iPhone 2007. Right? That's when they released it. June 29, 2007, at the price of $499 for 4 gigabyte model, and that it would only be on AT&T. I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing those kind of weird things, right? And they made it this huge, like, oh my God, the future. I could watch a fucking movie on it. So... that's Sag wanting to like look into another world, but Capricorn, you know, it's everything from political aspects to people losing their minds over the control. This is you have to see what's starting to pop up, and you know what's been popping up is the Starlink phone, and that's what you've been seeing, direct to call. In the last week too, as we're finishing this Pluto and Capricorn, it's been Starlink nonstop, right? Starlink direct to cell, text, voice data. Now you just can be anywhere in the world and eliminate dead zones, engineered by SpaceX. So I wouldn't be surprised now with Twitter or how you're going to get into certain social media, and you need to be understanding of tech. Or the big thing, 41% of jobs will be gone because of AI, right? News. This is actually like extremely recent. Hold on, I'm going to have to find this really quick. This is a very Pluto at the end of Capricorn, right? Because you didn't want to do what you were unique with, the jobs that don't align with people that a fucking computer can do. You know, AI jobs, like it's fucking here. AI will affect 40% of jobs and probably worsen inequality, says the IMF, the International Monetary Fund head. Just for shits and giggles, the date, January 15th. I'm doing this on the 16th. Pluto and the Sun are doing this on the 19th into the 20th. And these are the headlines. So whether you hate AI or you just want to stay away from it, you don't realize how it works. 40% of jobs around the world. And then when you already know that they're going, what are they going to do? Put you to go work in a fucking sewer? I've told you forever that those that understand technology will make it through this, period. And the same thing with Pluto and Capricorn. If you played Capricorn, you won. You made it. You're okay. You know? That's why I laughed at the spiritual community for so many years, that they kept trying to run to the hills and not be part of society and not be integrated in. And look what's happened. I wonder if all of them would have stayed in or utilized technology. They're so afraid of it to connect to the world. Well, now they're going to have to know how to do that. And put it this way, now all the LinkedIn, all the tech industry is about who you know and proven that you've done it. Proven that you've done it. And that you need to know how AI works. You have to understand Python code. You have to understand GPTs. You need to understand how to install different GPTs into Python code. And you need to understand how it works with different GPTs. And you need to understand how to connect it to the main of it all by having your own site with it, but also connecting to things like ChatGPT because it's the biggest. But also the other part of it is understanding how to have the right hardware. And that's like the big new thing is not going to be an iPhone. It's going to be a graphics card. Because the other biggest story, and this is so Pluto and Aquarius, right? We all thought a phone would be technology. It's going to be graphics card. NVIDIA's supercard founders, right? Boom, review. But the big news was China going around NVIDIA. And black market keeps NVIDIA chips flowing to Chinese military and government. This was just in the last 12 hours. We need more anime girl graphic cards. I know for you all, this seems like, what? Reports of RTX 4090s being sold in China without GPUs scares the heck out of me. That all AI runs off of not only is quantum computing, but then for it to get to users or for users to use it or for you to actually build upon it, you need to have the best graphics card. And anybody who's going to make it through this is going to be who's the dominant person who has a computer with the right graphics card. Your Apple computer won't do it. Apple did not position themselves correctly for AI. So your Apple is not going to save your life. Your PC will save your life. And how you run the world through your life will be through how well your graphics card is. They're expensive. They're not cheap. They're more than any other part of a computer. Tech war. China chip imports fall to 23 in semiconductors. NVIDIA stock heads for record high. It's shugging off China concerns. China AI customers eye domestic in-house chips instead of NVIDIA's export compliant GPUs. They want to do more crazy shit with them. That's how the world's going to be run, and why 41% of the jobs around the world are going to be gone. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see that this year. If you're in construction, AI can just take the field of view, take a couple iPhones, hook it up to the AI, take it and do better at solving the problem than humans. You need to fix something? Take the pictures with AI. It'll figure it all out. It'll send back it. There's no need for coders. There's no need for anybody at a fucking service at all. I mean, no need for service. I mean, no need for any of that shit. Even factories. Oh, you want to make some cool thing? Oh, well, you're going to have to go to an AI factory, and then you're going to have to send it using the right GPU. You just can't be like, I have a good idea for a product. Here's the schematic. It's like, no, it's got to fit within Python code, and it needs to work, and it has to be tested, and it needs to work because they're going to build it with 3D printers, the robots, and then it's going to be shipped and it's going to be all integrated. Do you have a graphics card to do all that? Well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still like learning on my Apple. Good luck. I've been warning about this for a long time, and then this is also the end. And I'm sorry to say this, and I'll come to the end of this, right? Like, this is, I'm gonna end it, but you know, this is the end of the old guard. This is the end of the Pluto Leo generation, and some of the Pluto Virgos. You're not going to see them around longer. This is where, whenever Pluto moves and ingresses into a new sign, especially with the sun now. And the rarity of this one, which I think I've proved in this long ass fucking deep astrology because it's important as fuck, that, you know, a lot of people are done. A lot of people that, you know, and especially you're going to see Social Security, all these things be gone. And I don't think that might be fully this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if you already start seeing the talks about it, the debates about it. Including in the European Union and Canada. No more free healthcare, none of that. The things that people rely on. So, and that's the whole, oh, I've got this in the bag. I've got my Social Security, or I've got my Canadian healthcare, or I've got my this, or the EU, we've got these services, or we've got the, no, you don't. What you were so attached to actually was part of a system that was meant to fall. So unfortunately, it's going to be about GPUs, AI, computer. Again, nerds are going to win. And there's something weird about that. So you know, and I'm sure you all know that I posted about it. It's not, you know, Astro Mystic is not going to replace High Vibe. Astro Mystic is for a new generation of people to understand astrology that are the newbies that need to see it, to understand their own chart, to understand their compatibility, to understand their own timing and have a visualization of it and a description of it without me doing millions of readings. But it also is a way for people that quickly can be able to get a scried version instead of a cheap version, but a real astrological understanding of a visualization of what they're about to go through. If they should partner with this person, if they shouldn't, friend-wise, business-wise, so forth. This has been my plans for 6 years. If I should really go on the date, is it the right time for me? And then actually visually showing you, this is what it would look like if you did. This is what it would look like with you and this person. This is what it would look like if you and this person start a business. This is what it would look like if you continue to keep doing this in your life when the transits and the progressions are doing this right now to you. And that's not something that Chat GPT is doing for me. That's stuff I'm inputting from Python and going into the open source code of astrology and building and teaching the AI to understand how to do these things with my own flavor. And if you don't know how to do that kind of stuff, the new store isn't the Apple store anymore. It's not apps. You're already behind the 8 ball if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to build an app one day. No, it's GPTs and the GPT stores. That you're going to have to pay money to use your bank with a GPT. People are worried about CBDCs. They're not worrying about how they're going to get access to a way to actually, you know, not an app, but a GPT that works to serve you that an app can't do. So there's not going to be programs anymore. There's not going to be like, well, I'm going on Microsoft Word, or I'm going on this program I use, or I'm going to write a book on Word, or I'm going to use this program for editing a video or anything like that. That's all gone. It's already all gone right now in that world. Just 99% of the population still have not jumped on the AI train to understand how it works, or even what the fuck's going on, or even understand anything about it. Like don't have a clue. And that's always at the end of Pluto. And the people who jump on the train win, and the people who don't lose. And that's just my truth to you, that I know you all hate AI, but I'm just telling you that there is a good AI if you are the one that is going to make it good. But again, if so many of the good people are so afraid of it, well, then all the bad people are going to use it. And that's where we fail every time with technology. So maybe Pluto and Aquarius is maybe teaching you to not be so afraid. Same way, like I was afraid of corporate America or becoming a corporation or learning how to play with the big dogs. How else did I get here? If I would have just tried to do the spiritual thing and just not, you know, just said Om, I wouldn't be here. So, and that's the problem with the older generation, is they don't really use computers. They use Facebook, they use the internet, that's it. They don't use computers. They don't care what the computer is as long as it goes on the internet. They don't care what the iPhone is just as long as it works. That world isn't around anymore. It's not in computer world. You can't even access the upper levels of AI working or even ray tracing in graphics cards unless you have the right graphics card, which right now you can't even get the one to do that, or to use DLS 3.0 and 3.3, or to use DLAA. Like, in order for you to use all these things, you have to have the right graphics card, which no Apple computer has, which no PC that you pre-buy unless it's like a $3,000 one and you know for sure it's a 4080 in there, RTX, or even any of the A100 like Asus chips and so forth. Like, you don't have access to Omniverse. You have no access. You can only use other people. And what I mean by that, I'll give you, because I'm just going to fucking show you all so you understand. What do I mean by that? Right? So in the world of AI, if you want to, I think I just bookmarked this, so maybe Yeah. Other. Like when you're dealing with AI, okay, there's like this way that you can do it. But like, let's say you want to, you want to use Python AI code. And then like Amazon Web Services, AI code generator, right? Real Python, Python AI, how to build a neural network and make predictions. Right? AI Python code, right? But then there's these sites that will allow you to not have to have the GPUs yourself, but they're going to charge you to use their shit. And it's going to be based off every single turn of the fucking algorithms and be charged. So people like think that the big money is in crypto. That is so low. In AI, because people don't know how to use this shit, the big people have already taken over. All the money over the last year went into AI, right? They didn't do startups anymore for guys who had cool ideas about this app anymore. No. It went on AI only because all the GPUs you can use, but you got to go through us, right? So if like you want to host, right? If like, you want to like host, a GPT, right? Like you can get into how to host your OpenAI GPT on your website. Try agenthost.ai. Get started. Host and monetize your custom GPT on your website in 5 minutes, right? But what is it doing, right? It's I don't know this one, but like, here's a free your GPT. Get started. But create plans and subscriptions for your GPT. Bring your vision to life with style. I bet you didn't even know that this was all out there yet. Try it for yourself. Plans. $19.99 a month. You get 3 GPTs, only 5,000 message credits per month. Monetization for your GPTs, no auto deletion, custom branding. There's no unlimited, right? You're getting charged per thing. So let's say you actually have a GPT that takes off and you have 1 million users on it using it every day, and how many algorithms you don't have, you're going to get charged up the ass. So, like people aren't realizing where this is going. This is a whole different world than most people are even prepared for, period. They just think it's a chat. They just think like, I can make a picture with it. I can do this. No, your whole life is going to be through AI GPT. It's not going to be called AI. It's going to be called GPT. And it's not just chat GPT. And what's crazy is with open source, I made the code. Okay, anybody can take the code now. It's what you know how to teach it, train it, and predict with. And if you don't know how to do that, of course, being an astrologer, that helps, but and a computer nerd, but if you don't know how to do that, where are you going to be able to come up with the money to do that physically with the GPUs or with the AGI projects that you're going to need to understand on how it's got to be in the back using other people's GPUs in the background, right? So self-hosted GPT models and their benefits, because you can do more, but look at hardware requirements. A high-end GPU is essential to train large-scale GPT models. It's recommended to have at least one NVIDIA GPU with 16 gigs or more, which is a 4080. CPU, a multi-core CPU is required. And a minimum, at least 4 cores. Most Apples don't have that unless you get to their new chip, but they don't have the right GPU. When they say NVIDIA, it has to be NVIDIA. And what did Apple do? It's separated from that. RAM, You need to have the right amount of RAM. The data sets used to train GPT models can be massive, often require hundreds of gigabytes or even terabytes of storage space, therefore high capacity hard drives. Deep learning frameworks. Python is the most commonly used programming language for deep learning, and it is a necessity to have Python installed on your machine for running deep learning frameworks. Then CUDA, which has always been a part of NVIDIA, employs the use of GPUs for deep learning. And I know I might sound like this, but this is the world of Aquarius you're coming into. And I know you're like, oh God. But I don't, again, when I warn people like you need to leverage in the spiritual community, corporations and building businesses and doing that in Capricorn. Now I'm telling you that we're coming into Aquarius. If you don't understand this world, then you're far behind. And you have 41% of the world's jobs are going away this year. 41%. I already don't have to hire as many people because I am using all of AI in every way that I don't have to hire certain people that I used to anymore. Never again will I have to hire those people. So it's fucking crazy, especially once I get the camera situation that automatically switches based off knowing my voice and deep learning all that I won't even have to have somebody running cameras for me in my future. So where is it that you're not getting it in your life? That your job is going to be how well you know how to use it, period. If you don't know how to use it, then your job's gone, and then you don't create a job that actually will be utilized, and then where do you go? The sewer? That's the scary part of Pluto and Aquarius. And again, it's technology. And it's been here for 4 years. But in the last 4 years, you've seen the biggest transformation in not just tech, but you've seen the biggest transformation in computers ever. You've seen the biggest transformation to, same thing happened in Saturn Pisces. Apple died. Nobody wanted an Apple. Windows 95 came out, and that was the number one selling computer all the way through until Apple finally revived itself somewhat by the iPhone. And it didn't really even do it up until 2012, 2013, and even more like 2014 with the MacBook Pros then. So it takes another 20 years for Apple to come back. This is the fall of Apple. This is the fall of and the rise of the PC again, and the rise of a GPU, and the rise of being a tech nerd. And unfortunately, in Saturn and Pisces, and I remember it because I was a kid and I built my first computer at 11. And that was 1995 for me. That, like, full blown, like, knew what I was doing. The one I built at 7, I kind of knew. But that was a 48060X processor. You had to go to a Egghead Software. Right now, you have to go to a fucking Micro Center. If you're just buying shit on Amazon, you can't get it. And half the time, it's fucking not the real shit. And with the shit happening in China right now and everything, your whole protective element of your whole life, your phone, your everything, your internet, all of it is moving into this space. I mean, and your money from being taken from you. The crypto community's far behind. They think it's just like, I make money off crypto and I'll be fine. No, you won't. All that money could be taken away with all these new GPUs that are intense, that know how to deep learn and trick and get, like I've always warned, and start stealing your fucking money and making counterfeit digital money on you. You're afraid of your identity being stolen? Well, it's not going to be about because you pay some service anymore. They're going to increase those rates because they're going to have the right computer systems to be able to do that shit. We're in a whole new world. So, and self-hosting, I'm going to end with that. Self-hosting, Pluto, survival. You're going to have to learn how to do building an open source LLM provider for self-hosting. You're going to have to learn how to self-host technology in order to survive. The way that you know life to survive now, where you have your own freedom to do what you want and all that. Or you're in a world where they host you. They host you because you don't want to learn. You know? So that's my warnings. I mean, I have way more. I don't want to scare people though, but it's much more about the war shit. And even deeper than that, the disease X, which again will not be some new disease. It will be the one that's been underlying and been happening for the last 3 years, not 4, 3, since the Jupiter Saturn of 0 degrees of December 21st, 2020. Ironically, that coincides with the first shots. I appreciate you all. Stay positive. We're going through a portal like you have never felt before. So if you feel weird right now, or me, I'm sick, or whatever, like, you know, it's part of it. It's part of it. Nothing is going to go perfect. In Aquarius, perfection is scattered. Perfection is frazzled. Perfection is beyond shattered. There is no more on time. That life is gone. So, I appreciate you all. I'll do sun signs tomorrow since I'm still sick, and I've already let Rich know that I can't come in tomorrow. Because right now I have to go to sleep. I'm dead. I'm surprised I did this without blowing my nose. But, so, I appreciate you all very much, and I hope that this helps. I'm going to have to put this all into one since we had to stop. And I appreciate you all. And remember to be positive. But I'm giving you, I give you the truth as an astrologer. I just think I just showed you that if you didn't even know about that world, how it all works, maybe you should. So, because the end of Pluto Capricorn with the sun is the end of jobs as we know it. And moving into Aquarius is those that understand the technology. Those in the know, just like most people had to serve a military during the Revolutionary War, right? Or whatever, when only certain people who had the higher up understandings of the new technologies. Remember, Benjamin Franklin took a key with a fucking kite and understood electricity. Thomas Edison wasn't around yet for a light bulb. And he was a founding father. I appreciate you all. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Attention, please.
Yo. Okay.
Attention, please.